everyone. Welcome to the December 16th meeting of the Portland City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Novick,
Here.
Fritz,
Here.
Fish,
Here.
Saltzman, Hales.
Here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We have some communications items up front and then our regular calendar. It doesn't look like we have a large group here, so we shouldn't have any trouble accommodating testimony. So let's move, please, into our communications items, number 1297.
Request of Crystal Ilinsky to address council regarding hypocrisies in the state of emergency.
Crystal, are you here? Okay, guess we'll have to move on, please.
1298, request of Carlton Bone to address council regarding racism at Lewis and Clark College in the city of Portland and the nation.
Carlton, you here? 0-2. All right, 1299, please.
Request of Michael O'Callahan to address council regarding shelterlessness and hollow point bullets.
Michael, come on up.
Thank you very much. No, quick thing on hollow point bullets. They were banned internationally after World War I. The police used them on us. That's why people that get shot die. Anyway, on to another thing that's a lot more fun. I call it a DIGB because I like acronyms, right? Accessory dwelling unit, garage, or basement. It's in your package there. Float a $40 million bond. Give loans to anybody that wants to create an accessory living unit in their garage, basement, or create an accessory dwelling unit. You give them a loan for $30,000, payable back over a 10-year period, 2% over what the bond costs you. Now, you can do a few nice things with this. You can put a rent cap on these units. You can prohibit Airbnb, and you can, in conjunction with the county, prohibit any tax increase for the life of the loan, making it a great deal for the property owner. Create, through the life of the bond, 30 years, about 3,900 living units, local jobs, larger tax base, money stays in the community, and the homeowner gains equity, okay? Pretty simple solution. Well, of course, not simple in politics, but then again, pretty straightforward solution and pretty doable, okay? Update on homelessness. Okay, Department of Justice said in a Boise litigation that they entered that if your shelters are full, it's cruel and unusual punishment to give people citations for camping. Interagency Council on Homelessness reaffirmed that. Okay, the city of Eugene just 2 weeks ago passed an ordinance allowing camping on public lands, on park lands. The British Columbia Supreme Court declared that homeless have a right on public land, okay? And what authority do you have to confiscate my property? There's none. And you do these sweeps, stealing people's property with no authority of law. Another point, I put in a few things in there. There are 10,000 homeless in Seattle. Okay, so let's throw this idea away that Portland's a mecca for the homeless and people come here, okay? That's pretty humorous, okay? And the solution is before you. You've seen Right to Dream. You see how that operates. Dignity Village, how that operates. And the new one, Hazelnut Grove over here. That's a solution. Come on, get on board. 25 or smaller, got to be fenced, got to be in different areas of the community. Let the communities pick where they go, okay? Because this homelessness is in every community, and I understand the communities don't like it. You know, I don't like it either, okay? But hey, let's move forward with the solution. Give us public places where we can put these in your community. Okay, and another thing, if I may, for a moment.
Quickly, and then we got to move on.
Okay, thank you. Anybody here want to feed 2 million people a year on a zero cost to the city? Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting that, okay? France passed a law prohibiting supermarkets from throwing away past pull date food.
Good idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear from Christina Albo, 1300.
Request of Christina Albo to address council regarding restorative justice in schools.
Good morning. Come on up. supporters and helpers?
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor Hales. I would actually like to request to give my time to 2 youth leaders from Boise Elliott Humboldt School.
That's a fine idea. Thank you.
Great. So just in brief, Resolutions Northwest has been working to implement restorative justice in schools around the city of Portland, and we've worked with Boise Elliott Humboldt for the past couple of years. And these 2 youth leaders, Aaliyah Stone here on my left is an 8th grader, and Aries Brock is an 8th grader as well. And they participated in the youth mediation training and are going to talk about youth voice and peer mediation.
Great. Good morning.
Morning.
Would like to start?
Hello, my name is Aaliyah Stone, and I'm the 8th grade class president of Boise Elliott Humboldt. Today I will be talking to you about why it is important for students to have a voice in school and how students are given a voice at Boise Elliott Humboldt. Personally, I believe that students need and should have a voice in schools to make school and learning more enjoyable and more engaging. If we are able to have some say in how we are being taught, and sometimes what we are being taught, and in what type of environment we are being taught in, it tends to make it a lot easier for students to retain and actually remember what we are being taught. Some ways that students are given a voice at Boise Elliott Humboldt are ways through restorative justice, such as the opportunity to run for student government as a member of student council or just generally requesting to be in the leadership class. In the class or as a student government member, you have the opportunity to change just about anything you disagree with in the school. Another way we imply restorative justice in our school is sending out a student voice survey, which is a survey that leadership sends out for every student in the middle school that every middle school student takes part in. And it is a chance for the students who aren't in leadership to have a say what leadership works on. One of the ways this has affected our school is by taking the student climate survey that is sent out by Mr. Jeffrey Waters. Did I say Jeffrey? Jeffrey Waters, the school climate coach, who the student climate survey is a way for teachers and staff to see how the students feel about certain subjects and other topics around the school. When we sent out the first student voice survey of this year, there was different categories. One of the categories on there, because our school wears uniform, is Free Dress Friday, allowing all of our middle school students to have Free Dress Friday. And that was the most voted category. That's what the students who weren't in leadership wanted us to work on. And so we had to put that into play because they wanted us to work on it. And so the first step was getting out a petition to show the principal that we actually wanted this. And we had 107 signatures. That's from students and staff members. And, I'm running out of time. And we had a referendum that we had to send out for students to vote on, such as like how we vote on measures in the real world. And the results were 94 out of 95. And yesterday we had a meeting with Mr. Bacon, our principal, and he passed the Free Dress Friday. And I think having a voice in middle school will help me in the real world, because if I feel something's not right, if I feel something's not right in the real world, I will be able to speak up for myself and say my needs as a person aren't being met if I need that. Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Aries Brock, and I'm in the reinforcement squad for Boise Elliott Humboldt Middle School. The reinforcement squad is a group of students who help make sure that our rules and policies are fair and represent our student body. Aaliyah talked to you about how important it is for students to have a voice, and I'm going to talk to you about how important it is for students to learn how to solve their own problems. At our school, we call this peer mediation. Peer mediation is when your peers help you with situations instead of adults. Most of our leadership class went to a place called Resolutions Northwest, where we learned how to peer mediate with other students. If someone is requesting peer mediation, the peer mediators are notified a time and place to go and mediate. Everything that is talked about in the room with the students cannot be shared with anyone. Students should peer mediate because everyone in middle school are all close to being in the same age group. I think that speaking with a peer mediator the same age will make a student feel comfortable with speaking their mind. Peer mediation helps our student our school by making students feel safe while among each other. When students feel safe, it is easier to learn, and peer mediation is helping create the sort of positive environment that makes our students feel safer. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. We really appreciate hearing from you, and we really love the fact that we have students who are learning how to be leaders. So please continue. We'll need you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's break our rules and hear it for students. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on into our regular calendar this morning. We have one item removed from the consent calendar. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3 items removed from the consent calendar for discussion. They are 1306, 1307, and 1312. Any other requests? Okay, so let's take a vote, please, on the balance of the consent calendar minus those 3 items.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Okay, item 1301.
Amend Bond Avenue roadway realignments in the South Waterfront District Street Plan, criteria and standards document.
Commissioner Novick,
Mr. Browning, take it away.
good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Rick Browning, an architect and project manager for PBOT on the Southwest Bond Avenue extension through the South Waterfront North District area. And I'm here today to ask for 3 amendments to the adopted 2009 street plan for the South Waterfront District that relate to the Southwest Bond extension. We have a few slides prepared to show you. Let's see. Aha. Let me get over to the laptop. Excuse me. So apologies, I haven't been up here before. There's some way to launch this on the screen.
She just
Okay,
did.
there we go. Great. So what you see before you is a page from the 2009 adopted street plan for the South Waterfront with the North District area encapsulated with a dashed line. So the 3 amendments I'm here to talk to you about are denoted by the festive holiday stars there. We've got to the north and left on this image the OHSU realignment through the Schnitzer campus area. In the middle, there is a proposed ZRZ Realty realignment for property just north of the Ross Island Bridge. And then finally, there's a proposed amendment on streetcar routing, currently as adopted in the 2009 plan. The streetcar would go up to Woods, the street just before the Tillicum crossing, which incidentally in this image is not shown as a finished bridge, but as a dashed line there where it says light rail connection. As we know, it's now finished. So I would typify 2 of these requested amendments as technical and fairly straightforward. That's the ZRZ Realty realignment and the streetcar, and one of somewhat more impact, and that is the OHSU realignment. The reason we're asking for these amendments at this time is that we are in the early stages of designing the Southwest Bond extension. And let me just pause briefly and for context say that Southwest Bond is shown with a sort of light menthol green here north of the aerial tram, which is that large pinkish bar in the middle of the image. South of the aerial tram, as you know, Bond is a finished street. North, there's nothing. It's currently Zidell property and the open area that will evolve into the Schnitzer campus. The image shows the completed network of streets, of course. Bond will function as a half of a one-way couplet. Bond will, when completed, be one way in the northbound direction, and Moody, its sister street, will be one way in a southbound direction. The streetcar, I might mention, on Moody will remain as it's configured with two-way streetcar despite one-way vehicular traffic. So that is not going to change in the future. As far as the streetcar goes, the current plan is to run the streetcar further up Bond and turn it and bring it back to Moody where it can use that two-way track. We're proposing to have it turn further towards the aerial tram, and I have an image to show you on that. So we need these amendments at this time. We're in early design in order to continue to prudently commit engineering and urban design resource to Southwest Bond. The amendments need to be approved so we have certainty on alignment and we can move ahead with the project. Let's see, I think I've got a little better image for you of the zoom in on the alignment. So now we're looking at the portion of the project we're trying to design, currently about, let's say, 15% completed. To your right is the aerial tram, and to the left is the Markham Bridge, where the roadway will come in and connect to River Parkway. So you see the OHSU realignment noted there with an arrow, and the broken line is the currently adopted alignment. The pink solid is the proposed realignment. The ZRZ realignment is in the solid gold, with the broken line being the currently adopted alignment. The ZRZ realignment is about a 65-foot offset to the west, and it will allow a more developable parcel of land to the east of Bond once it's constructed. The OHSU realignment is about a 85-foot offset to the east, and you can see that graphically in the image. Excuse me for going back, but I'm going to note one other thing on this 2009 plan. You note there are several pink areas. One of those is where the star is through the Schnitzer campus. There's two others in the image as well. Those pink areas are a new thing for the city of Portland. They're called special design areas, and they were put into the 2009 Street Master Plan, to the best of my knowledge and the Design Commission's knowledge, for the first time in Portland history, as a way to promote design excellence above and beyond what we would normally do in those areas. And they specifically call for, the 2009 master plan specifically calls for a collaborative effort in those areas shown in pink between all city agencies as well as outside private sector parties, adjacent landowners, and so on. The intent being for above average open space, access to transit, and creative ecological approaches. So by coincidence, it so happens that the star on the left, the north side, the OHSU realignment is one of those special design areas. So we have this layered on top of the realignment as an issue in this area. The other two special design areas are roadways that will be designed and built in future years. So I wanted to address that. It is an unusual aspect of this project. All right, moving on. So I mentioned the two technical amendments. I'd like to get those out of the way first. So I've discussed the ZRZ realignment and the reason for that. The streetcar change, this image shows you the streetcar where it currently turns in the vicinity of the aerial tram, and that's indicated by the solid green arrow. As I think you know, that's a rather uncomfortable turn. There are some pedestrian issues. It limits the ability for the aerial tram to be loaded and unloaded from two sides. And OHSU is anxious to have that addressed. As I understand, aerial tram volumes have increased considerably recently. The dashed green arrow is a suggested turn for a future streetcar. However, The reason we are asking for the streetcar turn to be revised is not because we have a definite landing place for it today. Rather, our traffic engineers have determined it's technically infeasible and in fact unsafe for the public to have the streetcar turn on Woods as it is currently adopted. The geometry of the intersection there simply does not allow for the sweeping turn the streetcar would have to make. We would have to set a stop bar very far back on that street, and it simply operationally is not something we want to happen. So we would like to remove the designation for the streetcar turn on Woods and come back at a later date with a definite proposal on where it will turn in the future.
So this proposal is just asking us to get rid of it altogether?
No, we definitely need the turn.
No, I
So-
understand that. I'm just saying you're asking us to take off the designation and not put another designation.
That's correct for now.
I'm really concerned in the proposed area here, that would take out a lot of bicycle parking.
Well, we have many details to work through. I think that, given the time and goodwill from groups such as ZRZ Realty, we're going to be able to come up with a proposal will be acceptable to council and an enhancement for this area. But I have none of those details to show you today.
But it will come back to council?
Absolutely.
And do you have an estimate for when that might happen?
I don't have a specific date. I would think, just given the schedule for the whole project, it could be 6 months.
But that, 6 months rather than 6 years?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. We should have it built in 6 years. Okay. All right, so moving on then. The third amendment is of greater impact, and this is the OHSU property where the Schnitzer campus will evolve. You're looking at just the street layout here, but you also see both the adopted alignment and the proposed alignment. So the adopted alignment is in light blue, and it's further away from the greenway setback. The proposed alignment is what says Southwest Bond and is shown in gray. The reason for the request is because, as you can see, the adopted alignment leaves a relatively narrow swath of land between the east side of Bond and the greenway, and those are developable parcels, but only marginally. They're about 90 feet deep. So the types of buildings that could be put in those parcels are not ones that lend themselves to academic research, which is, of course, the Schnitzer campus sort of reason for being. And OHSU has requested PBOT shift the alignment to give them greater flexibility and capacity in the main part of the campus. And I believe we have some invited testimony from OHSU to address a little more how the campus might develop. PBOT engineers do not feel this is unsafe or harmful to capacity. And on balance, considering certain amenities that might come along with this, such as a significant open area on the campus, OHSU is referring to as the Commons, which would directly abut the roadway. PBOT and other agencies feel that it's a reasonable proposal, and we're suggesting that there be a resolution to approve it today. So we took this to Design Commission on late September, and Design Commission, who reviewed it because of the special design area designation, had certain concerns. We then convened a workshop with the agencies you see listed there, PBOT, BDS, BPS, Parks, as well as OHSU and ZRZ Properties, to try and address those concerns. We returned to Design Commission recently in early December, and on balance, they gave us a thumbs up on the realignment, and so here I am requesting that. You have a letter from Design Commission, and it says we need to do some more work on this. We're perfectly well aware of that, and we do want to work to make this a great street. And the whole thing, but especially the special design area. I want to show you schedule for a moment to close. So this complex-looking schedule is greatly abridged and simplified from an unbelievably complex schedule put together by PDC, but it does give you some idea of the complexity of this project and the North District. I've simplified it by showing you just the Greenway, Bond Avenue, and building portions in blocks. There have been some changes recently that make this slightly less than fully up to date. Things change very fast on this project. However, big picture is correct. The Greenway design process, there's an early schematic that goes through the fall of 2016, and that star at the top denotes when Parks tells me they may be in front of Design Commission with their Greenway schematic design. To address Design Commission concerns about excellence of the design in the special design area, I'm going to propose today that after we reach 30% for our overall alignment on bond, which is soon, within, say, a month, we would like to slow the process down a little bit for the OHSU area in order to let Parks catch up with us in the design process. Together, we can then collaborate and do what Design Commission is asking, which is to get a truly integrated product that leverages the potential of having bond up against the Greenway area. I believe we can do this and still meet OHSU's schedule for the Knight Cancer Center, which is a concern. And if you look at the building area, the Knight Cancer Center schedule is shown in orange, going off the page there past spring of 2018. Their plan is to finish mid-year 2018. I believe we can finish their segment of bond in the same time frame despite waiting for Parks. We have some early construction activity that we can continue with despite our wait and catch-up maneuver. So in conclusion, I think this segment has a lot of potential, both its Greenway adjacency for public access, its synergy with the commons area that OHSU is offering to provide. And I might also add, it has an unusual sort of ADA access potential in that with the road so close to the Greenway and multiple connections planned to the pathways, it should be more accessible than many areas of the city for ADA. So with that, I'd like to request a resolution to approve these three amendments. I'm happy to take questions, or again, I understand there may be testimony from OHSU. If you'd prefer to wait and hear what they have to say, I'll be here.
Let's start with some some questions, and thank you for your presentation. In the accompanying materials that we have, it says that there's no additional cost in connection with this realignment. Could you address that?
It's the same linear feet of roadway, so big picture, I don't see additional costs. What I'm not fully able to address is the design specifics as we move forward with this and partner with Parks. But I would like to point out that irrespective of the realignment that OHSU has requested, the area would be a special design area in any case. So let me say, if there are costs associated with the special design area, whatever those may prove to be, those costs would be there irrespective of the realignment.
Does this realignment have any significant impact on the operation of the streetcar?
No, the streetcar was never, well, I shouldn't say never, but the streetcar has not for many years been planned to operate north of the Tillicum Crossing. There was an earlier iteration of the waterfront plan with a streetcar in this area, but the 2009 document, which is the current document adopted by council, has the streetcar turning south of Tillicum Crossing. So there's no impact on the streetcar.
And finally, sir, I imagine we're going to hear from both the Zidell, ZRZ Realty, and OHSU that they support this change. Have we received any negative feedback from any of the stakeholders?
To my knowledge, no. And I might also add our sister agencies who've participated in this workshop and so on, also, as far as I know and have heard, do not oppose the change.
Thank you.
So go ahead, Dan, please.
No, go ahead.
So
Do we have the amendments that you're proposing in front of us?
Yeah, I don't think I have them either.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So Steve,
this piece
Well,
of-
you have an exhibit
new amendments.
A and B.
So I have kind of,
These are different, these are these are amendments to the amendments.
all right, so let's take those up in a minute, but a more global question. If you could put Exhibit A back up, maybe with Carla's help.
I think I have a slide that's very similar to Exhibit A here.
That's it, yeah, that's fine. So, this is a much broader question than the small changes in front of us, but I'm just struck when I look at this, that this has evolved, to put it a little harshly, to kind of a strange place, and that is, we achieved a street grid south of the Ross Island Bridge that reflects the typical Portland street grid and the neighborhood streets that it echoes. We've evolved to a point now north of the Ross Island Bridge where, it's fairly suburban, frankly, to my eye. But even more strangely than that, I just can't figure this out just looking at this, and I guess I need an explanation. But as it's currently drawn, Bond Street has 6 curves in it between Meade and Gibbs. Where else do we have an urban street that you would want to imitate that turns 15 or 20 degrees 6 times in 6 blocks? I think people will walk down this street and wonder what happened, rather than simply having a boulevard that takes off from Grover and runs straight to Meade and then turns, as it must, in order to parallel the Greenway. So why are we doing this chicane in this one and only place in the Portland street grid?
That's a big question. Let me first address the easier part, which is if you look at this slide, you will see more street grid in the North District area, which is bounded by the box, than you see in this one, which omits that. So there are proposed streets such as what we call River Parkway towards the river in the vicinity of the Ross Island Bridge that do start to create a little bit more of a grid in the ZRZ Realty area. But you're right, in the OHSU area, we have this, this rather large block of land. Now first, I believe if our OHSU representative comes up and shows you a master plan of the Schnitzer campus, you will see more of a grid-like structure that is private development by OHSU, such as the thing they're calling the promenade, which is not open to motor vehicles, but is a de facto street for bikes and pedestrians on their campus. The chicane-like feature of Bond, well, obviously we need to go from a fixed point to a fixed point, which is from under the Markham Bridge to the Tillicum. And to do that, some type of curve is going to need to be introduced.
One.
Pardon me?
One at each end.
Yes.
But why
Well-
the four in between? Again, I want to ask this question not just to put you on the spot, but the whole team. There are streets in Portland that curve, like Willamette Boulevard, because it's on the top of a bluff. And as you walk or ride a bicycle or drive down that street, it makes sense that it curves, right? Terwilliger curves, because it's matching the contours of the hill that it's built on. But here we have a flat piece of ground in a completely blank slate redevelopment effort. And someone has drawn a street that frankly has this sort of drunken aspect to it, to put it even more harshly, where it's just sort of weaving left and weaving right. And I can't make any sense of it from looking at this diagram. And somebody needs to tell me, at least, and maybe others who are interested, why?
Well, I do believe the realignment straightens it out some. You can see that, correct?
Oh,
You can
that
see
doesn't
there's
look
a
straight to
reverse
me.
curve.
It looks to me like there's 6 curves
But-
between Mead and Gibbs.
The actual genesis of the street layout is candidly something I started with, and I was not privy to the
Not
original
just trying to put you on the
layouts.
spot,
So
but
I
whoever can
understand.
stand and deliver from
Yeah.
Peabody particularly,
Uh-huh.
and say, this is gonna be our street, we're gonna own it, and a whole bunch of development's gonna happen along it, which obviously there are people here interested in, and we are too. But this streets last for hundreds of years, so you have to get them right the first time.
Right.
And I'm worried that we haven't.
Well, there are representatives from PDC and PBOT in the room that might be able to address this with more background than I have. I don't know if any of those people want to jump up here or.
I've made it so inviting to come talk about this.
The drunken street, I like that. I'm Dan Layden, I manage the capital projects group for PBOT. To answer your question, I think Brian Newman, actually from OHSU, can probably do a better job with the OHSU portion and talk about what the master plan looks like. In terms of the Zidell section, the challenge we have is getting from underneath the Ross Island Bridge, which has constraints because of where the piers are located, and matching the intersection of Porter that goes across the Tillicum Bridge. So that's really the challenge point, is trying to get those two aligned. If you see, the old alignment actually had a little bit more of a curve. What we've done is straighten up that first block.
Almost.
Not quite. We can't quite straighten it out because we have to be able to get from underneath the Ross Island Bridge up to the Tillicum alignment. So we've kind of straightened that out as much as we can, and then put in a bit of a curve to be able to get up to Porter and be able to make the connection with Woods. And then on the other side, it's fairly straight. There isn't as much of a curve as it may look like on the map. So I think what we're trying to do is match those 2 points, both in terms of horizontally and vertically in space, and that's the way it's kind of worked out. The other thing I'd point out is this is the alignment that is in the master plan. This isn't the engineered alignment. There is more work going on with actually making the alignment work, and they may be a little stronger curves in this plan that you see that is sort of shrunken down than you'll actually see in the reality of the street. So we are very cognizant to trying to not make it be a curvy street, but there are, just because of the nature of the properties and the current context of the street.
But is it
necessary
possible,
curves.
and I think it is, to take off from the last column underneath the Ross Island Bridge and proceed in a tangent section all the way to Mead? It's not?
I can't
At
answer,
no angle? There's no place where you can get through?
I can't answer for certain right now. Maybe you can, but I can't answer for certain right now.
Geraldine Moyle with the Portland Development Commission. The fixed point is at Porter with the Tillicum Bridge.
Right. How
So-
wide is that opening?
That opening at Bond at the Tillicum Bridge is the width of Bond currently, so it's
70 feet.
70 feet. But there's a fixed point at Gibbs, there's a fixed point at the Markham Bridge, and then there's this center fixed point at Porter. With the TriMet Light Rail project, we actually built that intersection. So it was always assumed that Bond would land where it's currently constructed at Porter. So if you were to shift Bond south of Porter to connect to Mead, you would actually miss the pre-constructed intersection at Porter that was put in with light rail.
Okay, so why the curve at Woods instead of a straight section from the Ross Island Bridge to that point?
Maybe why Woods kind of sags down a little
It
bit.
appears to curve at the intersection of Bond and Woods. I mean, it's hard to see in this little
I
diagram.
think that's the proposed realignment, and that is, I think, to sort of give a little bit more room on the other side to the east for the ZRZ properties.
Well, it's already a huge block. So again, I'm just mystified as to why, I understand the property owners, including ZRZ and OHSU, want to maximize the footprint of their blocks, but you're also talking about designing buildings that are going to have a 5 or 10 degree angle on their face because the street is curving 5 or 10 degrees, or else you're just going to have, not a very good interface between the building and the sidewalk. So, again, this is sort of city design 101, but I can't think of any place in the world, any street that I've walked down that this one resembles. And for people that will be visiting this place 100 years from now, how is this going to make sense? Like Nadeau Parkway makes sense, or the park blocks make sense. How's this going to make sense? So you've been around city design a bit. Tell me what you think.
Let me help out. Dennis Allen, ZRZ Realty. I'll give you a little color on our portion as well as all of it. So as Geraldine said, we're under some constraints because you have to get from one point on Vaughn where it starts over there at Gibbs, and you have to get over through the Ross Island Bridge through a certain set of piers, across the light rail bridge at Porter in a definitive fixed place that even has a little bit of an angle to it. And then you've got to get over underneath the Markham Bridge at the top because you've got buildings that are in the way. So as it relates to our property, there's a couple reasons for the tweaks. You can see the old bond alignment, which is the line up there. We actually thought that was worse because it didn't have as much of a straight shot. So when you look at trying to make it more of a straight shot, we wanted to move it down through another set of piers to get it closer to being a straight shot from Porter to Gibbs. So that is somewhat of a straight shot. Now it has a few tweaks in it. The tweak over there south of the Ross Island Bridge is, I don't love it, but one of the reasons is to get that parcel to be big enough to fit a grocery store in the building. And that was a desire of us and everybody in the neighborhood, is to get a grocery store down there, and grocery stores have a certain size. You got to get the building to be a certain size. And so that was an accommodation to get it to wrap around a building that could work and still make it get by the barge business. So that little tweak in there is because of that. Then you go along and you have to get over Porter, and then as it relates to get down to OHSUs, you're getting out to get, which they can come up and talk about, but you need to get a larger parcel in there to make that work a little more. So I think that you've got some unfortunate circumstances that don't allow you to have a straight street. I'll also point out that I don't necessarily think a straight street is the best thing. And I'll tell you the reason for that. There's a lot of current thinking in the urban planning circles that to do things like traffic calming, you want to have some bends in the street so that you don't have people traveling at higher rates of speed. And I think that this is the type of district that warrants something like that. You don't need to go, I've said it before, you don't need to go at a high rate of speed down here because you're coming in and out at the portals anyway. So better to have some traffic calming features and measures that mellow the traffic a little bit and create a better pedestrian-friendly experience. And I think it's proven that some of these slight tweaks like this, where you don't have a straight shot in the automobile, will do some of that. So,
Yeah, well, again, we're in an urban environment. We're sitting in the middle of one with lots of straight streets and frequent interruptions, and traffic speed is not our issue here. I suspect it won't be in this neighborhood either after it's built out, because it's going to be pretty congested with all modes. So I'm just trying to make sense of this, from a long-term perspective.
and I think the spot that you really want the straight streets, because you want a straight street a lot of times, but you want it for consistency so you know where you're going in an urban environment. You also want it to see sort of what's the end. So the east-west streets in some ways become a more important straight street because you can see down to the water. So anywhere you're at, you can say, okay, there's the river. I know how to get to the river, and there's the river.
No, I get that, and I like what has been done between Meade and Sheridan. That makes a lot more sense. You got a street that's fronting the river for as long as it can until it turns.
Yeah.
That to me, in terms of just readability as a pedestrian or anything else, makes sense. But I'm still struggling with why it's necessary to make. I understand the Porter intersection's already built, and I understand the interest in a grocery store. But boy, that's pretty short term. I mean, maybe it won't be.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We're still looking for one, so, we'll see. But that's the reason for some of the bends that are in it.
Other questions?
Please. Well, the Design Commission's letter that they sent to us had a number of desirable conditions, so those will be addressed in the next phase. Is
Actually, I
that-
was going to propose an amendment on that.
Okay, well, I'll retract that question. And I'm just curious, we're talking about curves, and I guess the thought that crosses my mind is streetcar travel time. We know that's an issue. Do these curves slow down the streetcar at all? No. Oh, the streetcar's on,
Streetcar's still on Moody.
okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Stanley.
Yeah, and our proposal to turn the streetcar would put it very close to where it currently turns, although I emphasize that's not a definite, it's just a thought at this point.
So when Moody becomes one-way, what happens to streetcar? You say streetcar is going to remain there, right?
Yes, it will remain as a two-way operating streetcar on a one-way Moody.
So it'll be curved off or something?
Yeah, there'll be a dedicated lane for the wrong-way streetcars,
So it'll
my
probably move-
understanding.
Probably move faster because of that, right? No conflicts with traffic. Okay.
We hope not.
Okay, other questions?
So we have to do the amendment, right?
All right, thank you. Anything else, Rick, that you want to?
I have testimony.
Brian, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
well, you tell me when the right time is for testimony, but I came prepared to speak on the proposal.
I think it would be helpful if you did that.
Yeah.
Also, I asked Peabody, would it be possible to push this issue back while we answer further questions? And Mr. Layden has said that we could maybe, without too much angst, maybe push it back for 2 or 3 weeks. And I just wonder if possibly.
I would
give it-
appreciate that. Yeah, I'm still not persuaded that this is the best solution. So I would like to feel confident in this, given how long this decision will last, in getting it right the first time. So I appreciate that. And I'm sorry I didn't look at this more carefully before. I had a little bit to do with this street grid a while ago, but it's changed. So, yeah, well, let's let Mr. Newman testify, and then we'll take up amendments, because I think
Go to
this
my first slide.
testimony may be on.
Yes, I'll drive for you.
Okay, thanks. Mayor Hales, members of the commission, Brian Newman with Oregon Health and Science University. Thanks for your attention to this specific request, which we obviously support. I also want to thank the staff from Parks, from PBOT, from Portland Development Commission, Planning, and BDS, who have been working with us in a locked room in some cases, trying to get to consensus and support an outcome that works for all the city, all the stakeholders, and of course the property owners. And particularly, I want to thank, we had 2 members of the Design Commission actually spend an entire afternoon with us in a workshop, and then of course the Design Commission supported the recommendation that's in front of you with those conditions, and I'll get to those in a second. Real quick, the first slide, the OHSU Schnitzer campus is supposed to be a new research and academic campus, and the vision was for an urban, connected, green, and welcoming campus. We want this to be an extension of downtown Portland. We want it to be at least a 16-hour district, so it doesn't feel like the Hill does. Frankly, it was in response to the condition on the Hill where there's no sense of place that we wanted to correct and create on the Schnitzer campus. And we wanted active ground floor uses and a rich public realm. And I'll get to the rich public realm and a couple of elements that OHSU is intending to complete and fund to achieve that. Next slide. This shows you our master plan that's been revised with the bond realignment. And real quick to your question, Mayor Hales, originally River Parkway went along the river. That was the original alignment of River Parkway. It shifted over time because when the light rail alignment was chosen, which came later, that intersection where River Parkway crossed Porter, in order to meet the grades, because at that point the bridge is climbing to get over the river, it pushed that at-grade intersection west, actually split one of our development parcels into 2 triangles. And so it left a few parcels on the east side of Bond, but what we're essentially going to is back to the original River Parkway proposal, where at least on our campus, where the special design area is, it's right along the Greenway. There's 2 major design features to our campus master plan. One is the promenade, which is essentially a public street with no vehicles. It's bicycles, pedestrians. It's a rich public realm, as I mentioned earlier, We've built phase one of it with the Collaborative Life Sciences building, and we'll continue it obviously with our future buildings, including the Night Cancer building, which divides the campus into smaller blocks, getting to your point. It's hard to see on the street plan, but you can see it on our master plan. The second element is the OHSU Commons, and that is essentially the heart of the campus. And there's two features of that. One is that it's really the heart of the campus, it's the gathering space, but we canted it towards the Greenway very consciously. When you go down to South Waterfront now, if you were from out of town and just plopped into Carruthers Park, you wouldn't even know there's a river 2 blocks or 3 blocks to the east. We canted our commons, which is a green space, east-west, so it's unmistakable. It connects the campus to the Greenway, to the river, with those great views of the bridge, and hopefully great views back from the bridge towards our buildings as well. So it's really to create that axial relationship with the Greenway and open up the Greenway to the campus. Now, the final slide is really shows you.
Before you switch slides,
Sure.
in the time that we'll have for a couple of weeks, I would like to look at how this design scheme is rectified with this street plan, because I like yours better.
Yeah.
I'd like to see how they match up and why the wiggliness of both River Parkway and Bond Avenue makes any sense, because your urban design scheme here makes a lot more sense than what I'm seeing in front of me in the ordinance.
And they are intended to be straight and not have wiggles to them, so maybe it's just it's part of the way they were rendered or represented.
Yeah, it may just be a drawing problem.
Finally, I want to show you these sections that are really before and after. I mentioned that the alignment of Bond, after it was changed with the Tillicum Crossing, kind of pushed it further west. We ended up with these 2 development parcels north of Meade Street that are 80 feet deep, and you could build 125 feet or more high. They're strange in the sense that they really, if they're developed out, would create almost a wall between Bond Street and the Greenway, and probably out of character in my mind based on just the size of those parcels. We also realized they were not really developable, or at least easily developable. There's no curb cuts allowed on Bond, and so you couldn't park them. You can't serve them with logistics and supplies, and so they create these parcels that if they're left, they will be developed someday, but hard to do so. This made sense not only from an urban design perspective to open up the Greenway, but of course respect the Greenway, and the new alignment stays out of the Greenway and lowers the grade as you get closer to the river. So hopefully it'll be cheaper to execute from the perspective of PBOT, but it also trades that development footprint, if you will, onto the west side of Bond, where it's easier for us to deliver and works honestly better from our campus development perspective based on the kind of program that we have. So that's the reason we were supportive of it, and spent a lot of time, obviously, with staff and the design commission working through the details. We had another series of presentations of kind of design themes that we shared with the design commission. We have those if you'd like to see them, but happy to take questions on kind of how we arrived here and why OHSU supports this.
So I am concerned about what you mentioned, the building height towering over the Greenway. And by moving Bond right smack dab as far close to the Greenway as you can, that's going to also move the building to the west. And
further west.
My understanding is that building can have 250 feet with FAR bonuses.
That's correct. It's 125 feet, as I understand, base height, but then with bonuses, 250.
Yeah, so that's of concern to me, to have 250 feet just across the street from the edge of the Greenway. Is there a way that we could get a commitment for that building to step down at all?
Well, 2 points, Commissioner. One is by aligning Bond, I think you made this point, it makes sure that any development is further from the Greenway by the width of that roadway. So instead of, because there is a parcel on the east side of Bond under the current plan, which could be 125 to 250 feet high, only 80 feet wide, so it'd be a little weird, honestly, from a building perspective. But it moves any of that impact, if you will, from the built environment further west. But second, from our perspective, when it comes to height, there's 2 limiting factors that impact us much more so than the height limit that's allowed under code. One is the project budget, frankly, but the second is because of our uses, and this is the case with every single building we've built in the South Waterfront to date, we don't exceed the height that's allowed under code because we hit the FAR much sooner, FAR limit of 9 to 1, even with bonuses, which is the kind of the limit, because we tend to have larger floor plates than residential. Residential, because of the small floor plates, can go much higher, but because of research, clinical uses, academic uses, our buildings tend to be smaller, and the Knight Cancer Research Building is a good example. That's only 7 stories tall. And so I don't believe, and everything we've rendered shows our buildings stepping down to the river along the lines that you just described. So I think we're aligned as far as vision, but I don't think it's really a function of the height limit. It's more the fact that our uses tend to have those larger footprints, and the FAR is more of an issue before we even get that high.
Thank you, that's helpful. So is it the Knight Cancer Institute that's going to be right on bond?
Can you go back?
Yes.
To the kind of that 3D rent, right there. So I can't see it myself, but
The one with the pink
the
arrow?
no, that's not. So the Knight Cancer Research Building, if you can just highlight that.
Well, let's see,
Right
right
there.
here.
That's right. Yeah,
Mhm.
is there? That's 7 stories.
So
But-
how big is the one that's got the arrows?
We don't know, to your point. I mean, that's so far in the future as far as phases. We haven't programmed it or designed it, but we render it because, let me back up. Most of our intensive uses are on Moody Avenue, where the height limit is higher than closer to the river, because they're larger footprints, if you will. When the softer uses, which are more campus amenities, are closer to that commons, if you will. For example, that triangular parcel that's just east of the Collaborative Life Sciences Building, we've envisioned a 3-story, maybe 4 stories, School of Public Health, joint school with PSU. All of those buildings closer to Bond are closer in that range from 3 to 5 stories than the 12 or 14 stories that are closer to Moody. But you're right, your point is well taken. It's not a function of code. It's because of the way we've envisioned the master plan and laying out our program on campus.
Thank you, that's helpful. So you'd be willing to commit in that long rectangle that you don't know what's going on it, you'd be willing to commit to a step down from the ones that are on Moody?
Well, I think when you say commit, you mean like a development agreement, or? I
Well,
think
you're going to be going back and doing some more design. So this comments from the Design Commission that I'm going to incorporate in a minute.
Sure.
But so my understanding is it's supposed to be a collaborative process with a lot of different bureaus to discuss the development plan and the street alignments. Final.
We certainly intend to step down towards the river along the lines that has been set in the vision of South Waterfront and Code. Whether or not we trade away entitlement, I can't answer that question, Commissioner. I'd have to review that with my colleagues at OHSU.
Okay, if you would do that and then, while we're still discussing this, that would be great.
But to make sure I understand, the general intention of your master plan is to have those towers that I assume are the 3 rectangulars. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So you intend for those to be as tall or taller than the Collaborative Life Sciences Center, right?
On the west side of the promenade.
Correct, yeah.
Yes.
And to my eye, that's completely appropriate, both because the Collaborative Life Sciences Center is already there and the tallest structure in the neighborhoods of Markham Bridge. So, I have no reservations, Amanda, about them being vertical back there. I understand your concern about the Greenway, but saying as far as the frontage on Moody, where you're getting closer and closer to the Markham Bridge itself, frankly, I'd love to have something taller and more compelling to look at than the Markham Bridge in that neck of the woods.
No,
So,
I'm concerned about the ones on Bond. So if it develops like this, that would address my concern.
That's certainly our vision, Commissioner, and we've rendered it every single way, and it's not sleight of hand. It's not because we're trying to, sell something we don't intend to execute. It's because we actually agree with you. Stepping down towards the river and having more intense development between the Moody and Promenade makes sense from our perspective as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Newman,
Yes,
the
sir.
Design Commission letter mentioned an additional 10 feet on the bond alignment that could be available if the city would need it. In the absence of a more detailed design, that memorializing that offer of an additional 10 feet would be helpful in order to accommodate the needs of the street or greenway. Is OHSU still comfortable making that offer should the city need it?
We are. So we've already agreed to a street right-of-way for Bond that goes from 70 to 73 feet at the request of PBOT. So we've supported that, which is different from the original street plan. And then the flexibility that was kind of described as part of this process as it unfolds of 10 feet, we're fine with that as well. There's nothing magical or nothing secret that we're trying to accomplish here. And if, as part of the process of designing Bond and the Greenway, particularly if those schedules come together as described by Rick, if they need that flexibility, we're happy to provide that and support that.
So you also wouldn't mind committing to the area of land that you own east of Bond remaining vacant?
If it's realigned and we're talking, 10, 15 feet, absolutely. We one of the things we talked about with the design commission is making sure that that's designed such a well that there's public gathering areas, there's maybe kiosks for our seasonal activity, there's all kinds of things that accomplish the Greenway vision, and we'd be supportive of that.
Thank you.
So I haven't had a chance to talk to David Wark or the other members of the design commission, but I've seen their letter. But maybe tell us in your words, how do you think this this special design area tool is going to work in practice as you start working on specific projects in there? How's that going to
Sure.
how's that going to be different from design review otherwise?
I'll give you one example, and then Rick probably has some thoughts as well. We had a great conversation with the commission. It was a difficult conversation because, frankly, they like you, were asked to kind of weigh in on the alignment in the absence of details on how Bond was going to be designed to the Greenway. But one of the things we described to them was, for example, where the Commons comes down to Bond, having a raised section of the street, so actually the priority visually to users instead of going north-south along Bond is really that pedestrians crossing the street have priority. So it's a special area really between Meade and Arthur that signals that the Commons essentially continues across the street to the Greenway. And then we have identified opportunities that are consistent with code, but may go beyond code of activating our ground floors right at those adjacent corners as well.
So how would that, how does that get played out between you and the design commission?
So they put us on notice that they're going to hold us to a very high standard when we come in with our buildings along that special design area for activization of the ground floor, for furnishing zones, if you will, and just the quality and the design of those buildings. And so they were very clear, and I don't think we would shy away from that. We expect that and welcome it.
Yeah, okay, so I think it's important for us to get this discussion into the record because everything OHSU has built so far has been excellent. The projects that you've just taken through the design commission are excellent. But back to my earlier diatribe about the street grid, I mean, essentially what we're doing with this street plan overall, wiggles notwithstanding, is saying it's okay to have a campus here in the middle of the city.
Mhm.
We would normally say build out a 200-foot grid or thereabouts, but we're acknowledging that this area is going to be a university campus. And so I think that's appropriate that we allow much larger block sizes in what will be a campus-style development, but it has to be an urban campus-style
Absolutely.
development. And so what I would hope and expect is that the design commission and you will collaborate on a very high level of performance in terms of how those buildings meet the public realm, because they're going to be really big. And just like the Collaborative Life Science Center is a good-sized building, some of these will be even larger potentially. So that's really important that we get that right, because we rely on the design standards, our design guidelines, and the 200-foot grid to both get it right and limit the damage.
Yeah.
When somebody doesn't do a particularly good job of getting it right, it's only 200 feet long. So, this is a big deal in terms of having, that block's got to be, what, 500 feet long, the one rectangular block there?
No, the east-west, it's between 280 and 300. I can't remember the exact.
On Arthur and I'm talking about the really long blocks.
Oh, you're talking about without the promenade included?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
So
It's
okay, the promenade will interrupt
Divides.
the buildings, so there'll still be a grid there, but,
created by the promenade, that's right.
okay. Thank you.
Mayor and colleagues, I have a suggestion.
Okay.
I mean, Commissioner Fritz has an amendment, I have an amendment, but given that we've got a packed agenda today, and I think that we've agreed to take a further look at this over the next couple of weeks, I would suggest that we stop now and hope we can reschedule another discussion in a couple of weeks.
You want to take
Yes, just continue.
anyone else that would like to get testimony on the record today? Otherwise, we can do that. Okay, that sounds fine to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation and the council discussion and your patience with mine. So we'll continue this until early January. You want to wait and set a date later?
That would be nice if one's available.
Would be 11 o'clock,
On what
yeah,
day?
on January 6th.
Fine with
Pretty
me.
full
Fine with
We're
me.
morning.
already going to have, is there already a time certain that
There's
morning?
3 already that morning.
Yeah, I thought we were limiting to 90
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
minutes.
Let's
Yeah,
not,
the 13th is a better date. We would have probably 10:30.
Is that all right? Wait that long? 13th? 13th of January, is that all right? Okay, 13th's okay? All right, let's do that then.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's continued to the 13th. Thank you very much. Look forward to scheduling a meeting with my office in the meantime. All right, then let us move on, and we have amendments for later on that item, so we'll have a chance to take those up then. Let's move on, please, to item 1302.
Authorize agreement regarding outstanding Phase 1 matters related to the July 17, 2015 partial compliance agreement between the city on behalf of Portland Parks and Recreation and Laborers Local 483, Laborers International Union of North America.
Good morning, John.
Good morning, John Uto, Human Resources. This ordinance is just to provide 2 technical adjustments to the Phase 1 compliance agreement related to the recreation arbitration. One is related to pay, allowing HR and Parks to pay for preschool teachers above entry rate, and the other is related to implementation or withholding implementation of civil service recruitments until more stable funding sources are identified.
Okay, questions? Thank
The
you.
most succinct presentation.
That's
Time,
new record for clarity and simplicity. Thank you, John. Good work on this. Okay, anyone else want to speak on this item? Then let's take a vote, please. It's an emergency ordinance.
Novick,
Thank you. Aye.
Prince.
So this does represent the city's continued willingness to work with Laborers 483, who are also continuing to work with us. It resolves an issue from Phase 1 that there were 4 preschool teachers who had a reduction in their hourly rate, even though their total compensation increased when they became members of the bargaining unit. And we are not committing that this may happen again, but in this particular case, it was an unintended consequence, and we want to make it right for those 4 employees. Aye.
Fish.
I'm pleased to support this, and Commissioner Fritz, during your service as a commissioner in charge of the Parks Bureau, you've brought a particular zeal to raising the working conditions and standards of the people who report to you, and I applaud you for your work. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
This is good progress in a constructive partnership, so thank you all very much. Aye. Okay, let's move to, you want to take up the items that were pulled?
Can we do those after the regular agenda?
Okay, we
That
sure
would be
can.
helpful.
We can this time. That's fine. Let's move on to 1320 then.
1320, direct the city budget office to create an ongoing general fund transfer to the Housing Investment Fund starting July 1, 2016.
That's 1321.
Yeah, that's,
A rare, I don't think I've ever heard you read the wrong thing before in nearly 7 years.
That's right.
Even Steph Curry misses an occasional free throw.
Sorry about that. 1320, accept the Bureau of Development Services Business Continuity Plan.
Commissioner Salzman, Commissioner Fritz.
did you want to make some opening remarks?
Sure, thank you, Commissioner Salzman. I really appreciate that since I initiated it. So I'm very pleased to see this initiative coming to fruition under your leadership of the Bureau of Development Services. The Business Continuity Plan began during the budget process earlier this year when the Bureau of Development Services my portfolio. And the plan came out of a need for clearer direction and guidelines for the Bureau during times of financial downturn, allowing BDS to respond quickly and flexibly with necessary expenditure reductions. The Bureau of Development Services financial staff developed the plan in collaboration with the leadership team, the Development Review Advisory Committee, the Budget Advisory Committee, the Finance Committee, and the Labor Management Committee. We know how to do process. And it was I attended several of the first meetings. It was frankly really hard for employees and for management and for myself to remember the hard times of the recession and the drastic cuts that were necessary because we didn't have a business continuity plan in place before. And so because business is now booming, it's a really good time to have this plan so that future commissioners in charge of the Bureau of Development Services are clear with the council's direction on this is how you know when something is coming and this is what you need to do to avert the absolute cliff that happened in 2008. So very much appreciate all of the staff in Development Services, and thank you, Commissioner Salzman, for your partnership in this.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Fritz, for your leadership on this. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Director Paul Scarlett and our BDS Finance Manager, Elshad Hajiv, to walk us through this plan.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I appreciate the introduction. Commissioner Fritz, you stole a lot of my talking points, but I would say I echo them because truly this is a report that's intended to provide the Bureau guidance for when there are major downturns in the economy. And I do want to share with those listening and watching that we don't have any immediate such plans. The economy is strong. We're operating at cost recovery, in fact, exceeding cost recovery in a lot of programs. Our reserves are strong. The economy and the workload, staffing level, we're really heading in the right and strong direction. So I want to share that, just provide some context. However, the past experience, as Commissioner Fritz alluded to, did provide us some experiences, better or not, that has helped us to shape this report, to provide guidance and predictability for what actions are going to be taken, how and when. The report provides the commissioner in charge and the Bureau Director the authority to activate the plan, and triggers such as not recovering costs, or there's been downturn in slowdown in workload activities for over several months. Those are good triggers for us to review and monitor closely. We certainly won't be reacting in what I would say in ways that aren't feasible or practical. However, we do have solid data from economic matrices and so forth that we will monitor closely and bring to the attention of the commissioner in charge. The workforce, and partly because we have mandates that are state funded and, well, they're state regulated in terms of timelines, both on the land use review side and the building code side, we are required to comply and meet those timelines even when we're not operating at cost recovery. So there's some priorities that sometimes have to be set along with adjusting staffing levels, like which ones do we do, which ones don't we do. And so the report really goes into detail and spells out a lot of the necessary information. So I do want to thank Elshad and the finance team who's helped develop, and as Commissioner Fritz said, this was a very collaborative process to include, because the industry also wants to know, what are you going to do if there's a downturn? Employees want to know, what are we going to do? What are the criteria? And so this really has, I believe, we've developed it, and it's also aimed at, it's also developed as an evolving report. So from time to time, we will submit the report, we'll provide updates, we'll evaluate it, we'll make changes as necessary. But I do want to thank staff who's worked on it, and I'll turn it over to Elshad to go through some of the more specific details of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul. Good morning, Commissioners, Mayor. Elshad Hajiv, Finance Manager for the Bureau of Development Services. Before I delve into the plan, I just want to remind you that the Bureau is supported mostly by the fees, permit fees, license fees. 96% of our funding is coming from those. Only 4% is coming from the general fund. So there is a huge need for our bureau to be self-supporting because there is no reliance on the general fund. On the other hand, we have construction industry that is extremely cyclical in nature. So it goes through ebbs and flows, and we have to be prepared to weather all those ups and downs. The plan itself is developed over 9 to 12 months. And again, as Commissioner Fritz mentioned, it includes input from our major stakeholders and also from our employees. It's divided into basically 3 parts. The first part is the leading indicators. We selected 8 of them. Those are indicators that some of our divisions are reporting on a regular basis. Those include pre-application conferences, our early assistant appointments, evaluation of our received building permit applications, even measures like the traffic at our development services center. We count number of people that come in every day. So those 8 are designed to basically help us identify early signs in when the trends are changing. So there are 8 of them, and they're reporting them on a monthly basis. The plan triggers is the next set of the indicators. Those are 5, and if any 4 out of those 5 are triggered or activated, that's when the plan itself and the measures outlined in the plan will be activated. And Director Scarlett and the commissioner in charge have the authority to activate that plan. The measures, the plan triggers include, for example, if the cumulative cost recovery is below 100%, or if our reserves dip below our minimum levels, or if the number of applications that are coming to us over the 6 months period has been consecutively dropping, or the valuation of our permits. So if any 4 out of those 5 are activated or triggered, that's when the plan itself and the measures outlined in the plan will be triggered. Unfortunately, we as a bureau or any economist do not know the exact timing and the severity and the duration of any economic downturn. We can make our best forecast. However, as far as the when and how long it will last and how severe it will be, it's very difficult to predict those things. So that's why this plan is very important, and the measures outlined in this plan are very important to follow when any of those triggers are activated, any 4 of them are activated. The measures range from basically looking at our workloads, looking at our staffing levels, assess our programs, assess our workforce, and then make adjustments to it. There are 7 measures outlined there, and those could be implemented in any, basically in any combination or in any order, again, depending on the severity and duration of the economic downturn. Again, we're talking about something that is big. We're not talking about our revenues dropped by 5% and now we're going to go through those measures and implement them. We're talking about something really big happening. We also will actually already started preparing the dashboard that is being sent to Bureau management and to the commissioner in charge. It shows all of the triggers and all of the leading indicators. It also identifies managers responsible for reporting on them. We color-coded it. It's actually pretty simple. If it's green, we're good. If it's red, we have to pay attention. So, and again, as Paul mentioned, we will be evaluating this plan and the measures outlined and the leading indicators on an annual basis and make adjustments. For example, let's say the traffic at the DSC is the measure that we're using now. However, with the usage of technology, we may need to tweak it a little bit to include also online traffic. So we will be monitoring all of them on an annual basis and make adjustments. And this plan will become part of our budget submission every year we will make, if necessary, we will make adjustments and submit it for your review during the budget process.
I'll say that the Budget Office is pleased with the development of this plan, and it's indicated that it could be a model. I don't know for which bureau, but certainly we'll be utilizing it in our bureau and as part of the budget process. And so, before I forget, we respectfully ask that the council accepts this report.
I just have a clarifying question. When I was Commissioner in charge of Development Services, you would give me a report every month on all of these kinds of indicators.
Yes.
And I know that Commissioner Saltzman is similarly data-driven in his work style. Supposing we had a different director or a different commissioner in charge, what is the position within the Bureau who's responsible for tracking all this data and bringing any kind of changes to the director's attention, who then brings it to the commissioner's attention?
That will be me.
It's the financial manager, the
yes.
finance manager who is responsible for doing that tracking and raising the red flag if necessary.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Other questions? Thank you both. Thanks very much. Anyone else want to speak on this item?
We have two people signed up,
Okay.
J. Veronica Bernier and Crystal Elinsky.
Okay, come on up.
Go ahead, sit down. I can sit in any chair. Hi, Krista. Hi, how do you do?
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's been a while. Here, put that closer to you and you'll be fine.
Okay.
Good. See, you can see we're friends, but I don't know where or when. So that's good enough.
Same place as we met all these people.
Oh, good, the same
You want to go
tables.
first? Go ahead.
Now, who's first?
You.
You want me to go first? Okay, good. Good morning, everyone in the city of Portland. Welcome to Wednesday's City Council, and it's good to see you, Mayor Charles Hales. It's always good to see you because we like you. And good morning, Amanda. You always look so nice. Good morning, Commissioner Novick. You're doing quite well, and you always look nice. They're all handsome. Good morning, Dan. Oh, Commissioner Dan Salzman. You're looking well. Good. And good morning, Nick Fish. He always looks well. Anyway, it's good to see you. We're supposed to be speaking to this issue, and I do support what they just said. I think that it's important to support gentlemen who come to the city at their own expense and testify. Generally speaking, we do support issues in the city that are germane to all the people. And I like both of those guys. I think that I would generally support everything that they said except for one or two things. Let me look at that. It's 1320, isn't it? Oh, good. Oh, general plan. Good. Along the lifespan of the city, I'm happy to report that things are continuing. I just want to amend one little thing. My former professor, Dr. Seymour Adler, said, never hesitate to add to the built environment things, systems and constructs for life in the future, so I generally support it. I just want to echo that. And you'll notice that I'm clueless about what most of it goes, in that plan, but I just trust. Those of us who are out here trust in the Lord, and hallelujah. Thank you. Your turn.
Hello, good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Crystal Elinsky, and I represent 10,000. I'm very privileged to be here, and terribly sorry I was late this morning for communications. It's taken me a lot longer to get anywhere in this city the further I move out, and so when I first met you all, of course, I came here as a newly homeless person many years ago, and the news now is simply that I'm still trying to function within the subsidized housing market and dealing with apparently a condominium association that I didn't know about. And as well as the subsidized housing now want us all to pay 50% instead of 30% of our income. So speaking to the agenda item and many agenda items, speaking about the economy as if it's working is really funny to me. Whether or not it's a friend who's lived in the same house for 20 years or somebody who just got on the Central City Concern where you recommended me to this time, Commissioner Saltzman. Everybody is suddenly paying 50% or more, or they're getting a 25% increase on their rent as soon as the landlords found out about the emergency of planning for homelessness, that there would be a 90-day requirement for a 5% increase. No one's getting a 5% increase on their rents. They're getting huge, unbelievable increases. So I'm glad that we are working on a budget, on budget clarity that will work for the future of this city. I hope that as a citizen I can follow it more closely. I can't attend meetings like I used to. It's really hard as a citizen, and most people tell me now that I live way out of the town and on the bus that they can't attend these meetings and these hearings, and they really want their voices heard. So having a really clear business plan, I think would color-coded or whatnot would be very helpful. I'd also like to point out with the last agenda item that the Parks and Recreation hiring the rangers part-time was really upsetting for them and for a lot of us that were trying to push through the 15 now, which I always say is 50. I would like our city workers in any range to get paid as much as our commissioners. And whether they're working for Labor 583, or whatnot, and getting their benefits. So that's part of a really strong business plan where we can get over any humps, over any future economic crises. Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, anyone else?
Here I move the report.
All right.
Second.
Let's take a roll call vote, please, on adoption of the report.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Aye.
I'm really proud of this, and I'm just very blessed and honored to have worked with all the great folks in the Bureau of Development Services. I want to thank Director Paul Scarlett, Finance Manager Elsad Hajiev, also Deborah Siebert-Morris, who's here, Dora Perry, who's the Equity and Policy Manager, Rachel Whiteside, the co-chair of the Labor Management Committee. It's a wonderful group of folks who have done a lot of really great work to set out a framework that will hopefully give early warning of future downturns, and then give direction to the commissioner in charge to take early action so that we don't have the precipitous drop that we saw in 2009. So thank you very much for all of your good work. Thank you for the City Budget Office and the Chief Financial Officer for looking it over and giving it their thumbs up. And again, appreciate your partnership very much, Commissioner Saltzman. Thank you for bringing it home. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Well, again, I want to thank Commissioner Fritz for her initiating this report, and the staff at BDS and the leadership for bringing this report forward to us. As Elshad said, we are a potentially very volatile bureau in terms of the funding sources. 96% reliant on how well the construction, remodeling, development economy is doing. So it's very important to have these indicators and to try to avoid some of the dire situations this bureau has confronted in the past. And at least we may not be able to avoid the dire funding scenarios, but at least we'll have some early warnings and the ability to try to respond to those warnings and make sure that we are as even-keeled as we can possibly be as a bureau. So thank you. Aye.
Hales.
Good work. Aye. Okay, 1321.
Direct the City Budget Office to create an ongoing general fund transfer to the Housing Investment Fund starting July 1, 2016.
Saltzman?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have to tell any of you up here that one of our most vexing and urgent problems in the city is not having enough affordable housing. By our own estimates, we lack 24,000 units of affordable housing to meet the needs of our current residents in our city. We are working on many tracks to tackle this affordable housing crisis. We are accelerating our commitments to new affordable housing developments through our largest ever funding release. We are revamping our bonus program to prioritize affordable housing development. We have taken this first steps to institute a development impact fee for affordable housing, and we continue to advocate aggressively for new tools like inclusionary housing. Today, we are poised to take the first step to providing the first ongoing source of funds for our Housing Investment Fund through the dedication of our short-term rental revenues. There is no one silver bullet to our housing crisis, no one legislative tool or revenue source to solve our affordable housing crisis. We need a myriad of tools and sources of funds. And today we add one important piece to the tapestry of resources we require. So I'd like to now turn it over to my two co-sponsors, Mayor Hales and Commissioner Fish, before we bring up the panel.
Thank you. I'll just add these thoughts to that. Good introduction. This is an extraordinary situation, and it requires extraordinary means. And one of the reasons why I supported this change is that although in general I don't like dedicating general fund revenues, this situation that we're facing in housing is so significant, and it's going to last a while, that it requires that we use different metrics to decide how we operate. So to me, this is the right thing to do, the exception, if you will, that proves the rule. Commissioner Fish?
Thank you, Mayor, and Commissioner Salzman. Dan, I'm very proud to co-sponsor this resolution. You made it very clear early in your tenure as Commissioner in charge of the Housing Bureau that you wanted to build up a housing investment fund so that it could become another important tool in our kit to give us flexibility in addressing this housing crisis. In my view, there's a clear nexus between the legalization of short-term rentals, which has taken thousands of units off the market, disproportionately impacting low-income renters. And therefore, I think once that nexus was established, it's entirely appropriate for us to take the revenue from short-term rentals and to put them into a fund which effectively mitigates the negative consequences of short-term rentals. The Housing Investment Fund is that source, and I'm also pleased that the council has given you the broadest possible latitude to spend that money so that it's truly a flexible and innovative tool to address this crisis. So proud that you've stuck to this. Second time, I think, is the charm, and I'm honored to join you in this effort.
Thank you.
Further comments before we?
Actually, I have a question, and I see Mr. Andrews in the room. So will the impact of this be on the next year's budget? We just got a revenue forecast saying that we will have no additional ongoing revenue.
All right, well, let's let Kurt make the presentation.
It will
and
be,
bring
we'll put us in the
Andrew up
hole.
to answer that, so. Kurt,
Very good.
morning.
I believe there's also a panel.
There
Yeah,
is.
I want to
Commissioner
call
Salzman.
up, I think do we have three chairs up there?
We do.
Okay, John Miller, Executive Director of Oregon Opportunity Network, Israel Bear of Street Roots, and Jess Larson, representing the Welcome Home Coalition. If you can,
Fourth chair.
yeah, or drag up a fourth chair. and-
While they get settled in, I'll get started with at least framing the issue. It's my great honor to be here today. My name is Kurt Krieger, Director of the Portland Housing Bureau. And this is something that we've been working on for the last several months since I started August 10th. First, I'd like to recognize that the Housing Investment Fund is an important building block in our kit of tools to provide affordable housing in the city of Portland. The reason it's important, even though it's small, is that the money can be used anywhere in the city of Portland, whereas most of our revenue is dedicated to specific urban renewal areas. So this is jet fuel that can be used to underwrite projects, to help make projects affordable, and as per the resolution, it's limited to projects that benefit households with incomes less than 60% of the median income. As Commissioner Fish mentioned, the legal nexus, the connection between the source and the uses of funds is very compelling. In this instance, we know that market affordable units are being taken out of service in this community and put into play as short-term rentals. We've been doing, for the last several months, web scraping of listings of Airbnb, and we've done some preliminary analysis. There will be more to come in the new year. But it's important to note that there's about 2,500 active listings of short-term rentals just in the Airbnb platform in the city of Portland. Of course, there are other platforms available. Of those, 59% are for the entire
home or apartment unit. And 84% of those have high availability, which means that they are available at a minimum of 95 days per year. So those are stock that essentially is not available to the general public on month-to-month or lease term availability. And of course, they wouldn't all have been market affordable. We need to drill into the data a little bit more to have really reliable information. It's important also that you know that the Housing Investment Fund currently receives dedicated loan income from our portfolio of affordable housing units. These are performing loans, some 13,600 units financed by the Bureau citywide. We get about $600,000 a year in revenue. And the fund itself has a current loan balance of about $1 million. So this would be tripling the available revenue currently coming in annually to the Housing Investment Fund. And as mentioned by Commissioner Salzman in his framing of the issue with the Oregonian editorial board, perhaps more importantly, is that this provides a reliable stream of revenue that can be used as security for revenue bonds. And the modeling that we've done in consultation with Ken Rust, Chief Financial Officer, is that we could raise between about $12 and $30 million next year, depending on the financial assumptions made in such a bond. So I want to underscore that Portland is distinguished as a leader in this area. My colleagues in Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles have not yet implemented this measure. So I think you're on the leading edge. And having done this work for a long time, I'm very proud to be part of helping you achieve your goals.
Kurt, can I just get a clarification? I believe I read somewhere that the mayor of Los Angeles indicated his desire to do this, so is it just a question that they haven't actually implemented it?
Neither has Seattle nor Los Angeles actually implemented it yet.
But the mayor of Los Angeles, at least, is on record as saying that he wants to dedicate the revenue.
Indeed, as Mayor Murray in Seattle has received a recommendation from their housing affordability and livability agenda, which is a broad-based citizens effort, they're strongly recommending a similar move in Seattle. Yeah.
How much additional ongoing funding did the Housing Bureau get in the current year's budget?
Well, we're working with about $30 million of additional revenue. Some of it is one-time revenue. Some of it is ongoing. And I must say that as the council has indicated their interest in helping to resolve the homeless problem, some of that money can be used for operating because it's general fund revenue. This housing investment dollars can only be used for capital. So this might be used in consolidation or in unity with those funds.
No, in the last budget, the 14-15 budget, how much additional ongoing money did the council allocate to the Housing Bureau?
I think we got an additional increase of 30 in total. Our total budget is about $100 million.
And the ongoing amount that we allocated last year, does anybody remember?
Ongoing versus one time. Andrew's here, he might be able to.
Andrew's available, yeah.
I don't recall how that was divided.
He can dig it up while the panelists are testifying.
The fall bump had another 400, yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you very much, Kurt.
Absolutely.
Who'd like to be next?
Yes.
Jess?
Good morning. My name is Jess Larson. I'm the director of the Welcome Home Coalition, which represents about 115 organizations in the region dedicated to this very issue, the need for ongoing dedicated funding to build back our affordable housing infrastructure. Many of the comments I prepared for you today have already been said, so I'll try to be brief and just add some additional comments. We've studied at length what other cities across the United States are doing to address the need for local and dedicated revenue. There are hundreds of other housing investment funds, or they call them housing trust funds, and they go by many different names, with ongoing dedicated revenue sources that, from about $1 million to tens of millions of dollars. And so there are cities who are using as this additional tool $20 million from, in the case of Seattle, a property tax levy, in the case of Boston, developer impact fees. In the case of Austin, dedicated funds through general obligation bonds. In the case of Miami, a restaurant tax. So there are many different kinds of tools we can look to, but what all these cities agree is that it's necessary in order to combat the housing crisis across the country with these local dedicated fund sources. Because we're here in this housing crisis due to 40 years of divestment in affordable housing infrastructure, and we need to commit to building back this lost housing inventory. And as many people say, we can't just build our way out of that. We know it's going to take a lot to, and probably more than we have, to build 24,000 homes. But by increasing minimum wages, we can lift families out of poverty and the need for federal or affordable housing. With inclusionary zoning, we can have our developer and community contribute to the solution. But bottom line, for the families living with fixed incomes, for grandparents on Social Security, for veterans with disability pensions, there's no market housing available anymore. And the only way for us to ensure that these families have homes is with dedicated local funding. So thank you for your leadership in creating this first dedicated revenue tool to the Housing Investment Fund. By our estimations, we need $50 million annually dedicated in this fund. So we hope, as you say, this is one of many future steps in this direction.
My name is Israel Baer. I'm the director of Street Roots. I live in North Portland. I'll be very brief. Street Roots has supported this idea from the get-go of short-term rentals coming on the market and been very vocal in that effort. So we very much thank you for your leadership to put this forward. I just want to say, I kind of want to go off script just a little bit and say that, you know, I communicate with advocates all over the country on a fairly regular basis, and the work that's being done in Portland right now is something that other communities are looking to, that's having a ripple effect in how people are shaping their decisions, both locally and having an effect at a federal level. And so as we look to the future and how we are going to move forward on these issues, I just want to say thank you to everyone, whether there's consensus today on this specific model. I know Amanda, I know Steve, you're both at heart advocates for the poor. You care about this issue very deeply. And I know that everybody on the council cares for this issue very deeply. So we very much support this specific model. We very much support the work that you're doing moving forward. I think this is a historic moment, understanding that we're putting the first time in people have fought for 30 years to have a dedicated stream of revenue for affordable housing. And this is a historic moment, even though it's not up to scale that it needs to be. And I just want to say thank you for everyone for taking the time to do the work and look at this very complex issue.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm John Miller, Executive Director of Oregon Opportunity Network. Like Jess, many of my comments were already said by commissioners here. So, but I actually sat on the committee that sort of devised some of the Airbnb and short-term rental rules about a year ago. And also about a year and a half ago, I was here testifying that those funds should be dedicated to affordable housing. And it's great to be back today and to see that we've come to that conclusion. There certainly is a nexus, and at least we presume there's a nexus. I would say, and this is related to some of the comments I said a year ago, it's unfortunate that Airbnb and other short-term rental groups aren't necessarily cooperating to provide who has registered and who has not registered and so forth. It's a little bit frustrating to hear that Kurt Krieger and his staff are having to do their own combing of the data rather than asking Airbnb to provide that for us. You know, one of the things we don't really know is what kind of impact does this activity actually have. So I think that's just a good thing looking forward that we ought to get a better handle on. But today, it's great that we've got a $1.2 million floor going forward annually into the Housing Investment Fund. That's huge. My organization works around the state, and we know firsthand in working with Oregon Housing and Community Services that a lot of the funds are not necessarily being targeted in the Portland area, and a lot of the state funds. And so we really need to fill that gap, and this is an opportunity for us to help fill that gap. But it's a small piece, and we know the elephant in the room is the affordable housing crisis that we're all trying to solve. And, you know, they always say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And this is one bite. And we do need a lot more bites in order to overcome this problem. So that's about, I think that's what that summarizes my points. I definitely applaud Commissioner Salzman for bringing this forward. I'm glad, you know, it's a year later, but it's great that it's here now. So thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you all. Okay, thank you. Question?
I do have a question for all of you, although this might put Mr. Krieger on the spot, so maybe it's for the other three. When we voted to allow short-term rentals last year, wherever it was, I said at the time that I was concerned about the potential impact on housing affordability, and if it turned out the evidence showed that it undermines housing affordability, I would recommend that we revisit the issue and outlaw the short-term rentals again. My question for you is, if you had to choose, what would you pick? Having this additional money from the Housing Investment Fund or outlawing short-term rentals?
There's a third option. You can respectfully decline to answer the question.
But I'd really appreciate an answer.
Well, Street Roots can afford to lose the political capital, so we would say outlaw short-term rentals, but given the circumstances, that we feel like this is the best measure forward.
Ms. Larson?
Well, I guess I will only add that we need the data to understand what is the impact, and we need either the city to step up and find a way to gather that data, or to require Airbnb to provide it.
And I guess I would add that, and sort of echoing Jeff's comments, we don't know actually what the impact is. There would be different ways to mitigate it. Do we just outlaw short-term rentals, or do we ask the beneficiaries, the companies that run these, to actually give much more significant money to fund additional affordable housing in Portland? That could be one way to do it. I don't know that every single short-term rental is taking a unit off the market. Some folks convert their basements that they wouldn't have done that had not been for this program. So it's not a one-to-one necessarily. So I would think that we'd need a lot more information before we can make a decision on that.
A related question is, I did not pay, when we authorized short-term rentals, enough attention to the fact that we were, in part, authorizing people to build ADUs that they would then solely use for short-term rental purposes. Do you think that it would be appropriate to restrict ADUs to uses that are for permanent housing rather than for short-term rentals?
Well, I would just, one comment to that is that right now the taxation system within the county is actually stopping the ADU production overall. So if that problem is solved, you know, that's a tough one, because I think that some folks will build an ADU or convert a garage into an ADU in order to generate additional income so that they can actually remain in their home. And so to say that ADUs can only be used for personal use or for a grandmother flat or something like that, I don't think that is, I don't think that'll get us to where we want to get to.
I'd like to add something to the good of the order. While it may be, the sharing economy, I think, is a fact on the ground, and it may be working against some fairly strong economic forces to deny it, I think it is important to note that just in the last week, an important study was published by Harvard Law School, which documented racial discrimination within the sharing economy, and it specifically drilled down into the use of short-term rentals. And it found that when in markets, I must underscore, outside of Portland, since Portland was not a test city, that when names that were typically identified with a minority subgroup and typically identified with a majority group were shopped to hosts, that about 16% of the people that would identify as minorities were actually excluded from the marketplace. We are responsible for fair housing planning, enforcement in the city of Portland, and we take that very seriously. So if it does continue to exist, and that's certainly within your purview, they need to be held much more to account to the current civil rights statutes that you've put into place and the laws of the state of Oregon.
Director Krieger, since you are canvassing those national studies, would you just remind us, I seem to recall that San Francisco has done some good work, at least in the advocacy community, has about documenting the number of affordable units that have been taken off the market and how that has impacted the overall housing affordability crisis. Would you have a comment on that?
Yes, we're actually doing a deep dive into the data, working with the Bureau of Technology Services, because we need their authority to use some of these tools that are specialized, so that we conform to the city's data platform. But we will be doing our own fair housing investigation in 2016 to correlate racial discrimination as part of our analysis to impediments to fair housing, because we think the short-term rental market itself and the nature of the sharing economy may itself be an impediment to fair housing. We'll also be mapping this much more specifically on a neighborhood basis so that you have a much better idea. Of course, there are some, in the public domain, there are some generic maps available, but they are not at all precise. So we want to be doing some testing as to, exactly how much of these units are taken out of supply. One particular question I'm interested in is, of course, many of these are managed by hosts, but we need to drill down to find the address of the taxpayer to determine whether or not these are investor-owned by corporations and LLCs, or whether or not they, as Commissioner Novick mentioned, perhaps individual units owned by a particular household. And I think that would be really valuable information for the council to have.
Well, I just want to comment that the concern that I had when we took this up in the context of multifamily housing was that, first and foremost, in almost every context, we were told by industry that this kind of arrangement, that is renting out your apartment with one of these internet sites, would be a violation of the existing lease. So we were, in a sense, giving a green light to something that was, in the main, illegal under the terms of existing leases. I was concerned about the impact of withdrawing otherwise affordable units from the market. And there were also some safety issues. And one of the things that does concern me generally is that we have not gotten the kind of cooperation from industry in addressing the health and safety issues. And it concerns me. It's sort of like this is not a perfect analogy, but, we do get revenues from lottery activities that go to good purposes. This is a revenue from an activity that is largely illegal, in fact, that goes to a good purpose. I do have an underlying qualm about the activity. And let's be clear, this council, in authorizing short-term rentals in a multifamily, in an apartment building context, did also establish rather modest health and safety standards. I mean, this is not at the heavy hand of government. This is a smoke detector and making sure that if there's a fire, someone can get out of an apartment safely. And it does appear, Mayor, that up to over 90% of the hosts are still not in compliance with our law. And that means that companies that make the money by putting those units on their websites, which is what, in effect, these short-term rental companies are. They're apps that advertise these units and are matchmakers. They're making a profit knowingly advertising units that we don't know are safe. So that does give me a qualm. As to Commissioner Novick's point, though, because Steve has been very consistent about this, and it's one of the things I've come to appreciate about the intellectual consistency in his concerns. He raised a concern, for example, around urban renewal. Would we be tempted to create an urban renewal district that otherwise might be questionable on the merits simply because it created a revenue stream for a good purpose? And I will confess, Steve, that for me, the education URA was a close call when we adopted it. And I'm very pleased that this council honored the commitment by finding resources in North Macadam to compensate for the loss of that. But I think Steve's point about not simply embracing something for the purpose of creating a revenue stream is important. And it would certainly be my expectation that if at some point this council said that we are not going to allow short-term rentals and multifamily, then that's going to affect the income stream. And we all understand that. We'll have to balance, having the money for the HIF and the health and safety and well-being of our people. But that's not what I think is before us today. And I sincerely believe that using these revenues is intellectually honest because there's a clear nexus in terms of mitigating the effect of short-term rentals, and that's why I support it.
I just want to add one thing going the other way. I think we can do also a better job collectively, all of us, at engaging the new economy and how it's engaging with the philanthropy community, whether you're talking the tech industry, short-term rentals, Uber, Lyft, whatever. There's an enormous amount of profits being made by those companies, and they are flying in the dark when it comes to really thinking about how to do investments from a philanthropy perspective. And if we can't live in a world where we have everything we want in the context of the market, we can live in a world where we also are being partners with these companies to be able to invest their dollars wisely. We may be adding $1.2 million today. It's possible that we could live in a world where Airbnb matched that money from a philanthropy perspective towards housing. So there's lots of ways to think about this, and it's very complex.
Mr. Bear, on another point, another issue entirely, I think that Jason Hayward's choice made absolutely no sense. That given the history of the two organizations, choosing the Cubs over the Cardinals is simply a fool's errand.
I agree, on the record.
All right, you two, take it outside. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
All right. Do you have any other invited testimony, Commissioner? All right, then I'll see who else is signed up to speak on this item, please.
Crystal Elinsky and J. Veronica Bernier.
First this time. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Crystal Elinsky. I represent 10,000, and I'm very privileged to be here. This is an excellent discussion. I've always been fascinated in following this topic, and I was planning on getting involved about this time last year, January. I came to Commissioner Saltzman's office, and that was shortly after I was evicted by Home Forward, the Section 8 Housing Authority. I guess what I would like to contribute to this is probably the silver bullets, maybe. I do believe that there are other ways to consider it, and I was wondering if the calculations have been made on exactly how much we need to house 24,000 in affordable units, and how much money we need to make sure that that these short-term rentals are in compliance. How did you come to the number of this extra funding of 1.2 million, and how much of that is it going to cover? And also, where would you be investing the revenue bonds? I mean, none of that would go into, I would hope, for example, not fossil fuels, but how do you look in the future? I know we're under an emergency plan right now, but for the future, to make sure this doesn't happen again, how much are you planning to put into this housing revenue, and when do you think we'll actually be able to, because I do agree with the panel here that it would be very simple to collect the data on how many of these units we have, and the people I know who do Airbnb are people sort of, I say, in the same boat as I am, that they need extra income to survive in this harsh reality that is not a good economy. I disagree with the last topic discussion. So I would just like to know, how do you invest the revenue, and how did you come to the number that this is actually going to house enough people? Because I would like to suggest the silver bullet, and I believe Bob Seeger would totally agree with me, is rent control. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Watchdog PDX. Absolutely agree with this resolution. Again, Commissioner Salzman, I think you're making some real good moves here pertaining to the homeless, providing more affordable housing, and again, also to the mayor on declaring a state of emergency on housing. Now, again, I think Airbnb is absolutely an advantage to this city. We're forgetting to calculate that they also go out there and obtain more units that aren't currently on the market. They do that through aggressive marketing. And also what we're missing with Airbnb is that their system is bringing in tourists from around the world that spend a tremendous amount of money through this local economy that'll far weigh out any losses that you can calculate pertaining to affordable housing. And you must keep that in mind, and also always keep in mind the Federal Trade Commission they'll win you in court every day. Now, issue number 2 is that I want to make sure, and the director of the Portland Housing Bureau, which brings up some really excellent points, is I want to use this as security on a bond. He threw out a number somewhere around 30 million. I've originally asked for 100 million. I say we go for 50 million to begin with, and we go from there. I like that idea, and this is positioning that to make it a reality. And we also have to look at the window of opportunity on these bonds. If we wait another 1 to 2 years, I think we're going to miss that opportunity. I think now is the prime time to begin moving forward on that and putting that together. Another issue, again, we were talking on the demolition tax on maybe converting some money toward your fund. I still think that's a possibility and could be a reality. I think we have to reduce that demolition tax and make it just a more reasonable number. And I think the developers are going to step up, and if they understand a percentage is going to your fund, they're going to say, fine, let's just do it. And that won't have the resistance that we're going to have at that higher number. And I think we need to keep that in consideration. Issue number 3 is that on the affordable housing issue, I agree with Mayor Hale's position on going for more shelters. I think it's a good move at this time until we can implement other things as bonds that we can get the more permanent housing. Again, looking at Salt Lake City, we're doing just as good, if not better, than they are. And that is my opinion. And that's through the leadership here. And a lot of their ideas are no different than what we're doing. We're just not coming up with the amount of resources to follow through. And that's what we're talking about today is resources. And that's the most important piece of this puzzle is how we continue to get more resources for the affordable housing, permanent housing, and making sure we have enough shelter space, which Mayor Hales is taking some risks there. He's using eco transportation, shuttle buses transportation to these shelters. I think it's very innovative, and I think it's going to work. Thank you.
Thank you both.
And isn't it ironic, Commissioner Fish, that we would consider Airbnb more illegal than the lottery at one point? We would get our source of funding from the lottery. That's the poor man's lottery. We always lose our money that way.
Okay, other questions for staff?
Could I have the City Budget Office Director
Please, come on up. So did you have a chance to find those figures?
Yes, with the caveat that they haven't been as thoroughly double-checked as I like, but yes, I believe we have found the figures. So just in terms of housing, and these are overall numbers going to a number of different programs within the Housing Bureau. In 15-16, there was no additional, in the current fiscal year, no additional ongoing funding, but there was about $6 million of one-time added. In the 2014-15 budget, there was $1.24 million of ongoing and about $1.4 million of one-time. And going back in 13-14, that's where a big ongoing amount was added, $4.6 million ongoing into the budget. In total, looking back over 5 or 6 years, in fiscal year 2011-12, the general fund current appropriation level target for the Housing Bureau was $6.1 million. Looking forward to 16-17, given council's action in the fall bump, it'll be $23.6 million, of which about $5 million of that is one time. So 18 million ongoing, 5 million one time.
It's helpful, thank you. Other questions for Andrew?
Actually, you need to answer Commissioner Novik's question about what does this do to our plans for next year.
So the forecast we just issued yesterday shows no additional ongoing. So essentially the amount of ongoing revenue coming into the city equals what we project to be the expenditures and $11.6 million of one-time. This action would transfer $1.2 million of short-term rental revenues to the Housing Investment Fund, or would create a Cal target that would do that. So it would put us $1.2 million into the negative.
And did the previous forecast include the $5 million that we allocated in the full bump and ongoing money?
It does. It includes both the $5 million ongoing and $5 million one time, since council already took that action.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions?
Well, in light of what Andrew just said, I would ask the sponsors, what general fund bureaus do you think we should cut in what way in order to make up the money?
Well, we'll get to that question when we get to the budget. that this is a judgment call about dedicating revenue to a specific purpose, which always means that there will be less general revenues for other things. And that's why, in general, I don't like this practice, but in this case, because of the gravity of the situation in housing, I think it's worth doing. We are also, and the most recent forecast indicates this, we're also being lifted by a better economy in the city, to the point, Crystal's point notwithstanding. It's not better for everybody, but it's better for us in that the general fund keeps growing thanks to the property tax revenues that are flowing in, and the business income tax and room tax revenues that are flowing in. Andrew can't forecast a new forecast. They just did one, but we will get another forecast in the spring, and I would not be surprised if our situation didn't improve further. We can't count on that, so we have to always know that we have to make trade-offs in the budget process. That's one of the reasons why I directed all the bureaus to go ahead and produce budgets with a 5% cut. Believe me, that's no more popular in the police bureau, having gone to a couple of roll calls in the last 24 hours, than it is in the other general fund bureaus. But it is nevertheless a good discipline for us to follow, because if we're going to make choices about prioritizing the housing crisis, we will have to make choices about doing less in other areas, even in a better economy, even with a bigger general fund than we've currently forecast. So there's no question this isn't a free good. But if there was ever a time when this would be less painful, it's when our general fund is growing as it is right now. Other questions, concerns? Okay, then let's take a vote, please.
Novick?
I'm very concerned about the upcoming budget year. As the mayor said, the bureau has been asked to prepare 5% cuts. BOEC can't take a 5% cut. We've already got too many people working forced overtime. Traditionally, of course, I have said that we can cut the police bureau by cutting the mounted patrol unit and the drugs and vice unit. I've heard from enough people who say that they're concerned by increasing lawlessness in their neighborhoods that actually, although I still would like to cut those parts of the police bureau, I would like to reallocate some more officers to street patrols. We are going, I hope, to ask the voters for additional revenue for transportation. And I've heard loud and clear from a lot of people that if we're going to do that, that we need to continue to demonstrate that we're putting some general fund money into transportation to show that it's a priority for the city as a whole. We have 13 firefighters who are funded with one-time money who should be made permanent. So we do not have a good budget situation. I think that it is reasonable, given that there apparently is evidence that the short-term rentals are reducing the supply of overall affordable housing, to dedicate some money from short-term revenues to housing. However, so I am going to support this, but without making any commitment as to how I'll vote on any other budget issue. I mean, this is, and I want people to understand that I do not assume that this means we're increasing the ongoing housing budget by this amount. We can set it, well, we can vote for this and still make changes in the housing budget in the normal budget process. I, of course, would not like to do that. I'd like to spend lots more money on housing. But I cannot commit that I will support cutting other bureaus by $1.2 million to reflect what we're doing today. And obviously, we're all very open to new revenue sources, and if anybody suggests some, then we'd be eager to take that up. So again, I will vote yes, but with grave concerns about the budget situation we're in. Aye.
So with this council and the previous one that I had the honor of serving on has greatly increased the ongoing housing budget from financial year 11-12, 6.1 million, coming up this coming budget, 18.6 million. So we have tripled the housing budget. So to suggest that this is the first dedicated funding source, that is just not true. We have dedicated an additional $12 million in ongoing general fund, which is good money. We have a process for the budget. We just recently allocated $5 million of ongoing money in the full budget monitoring process, I was proud to support that. If you had asked for 6.2 million, I probably would have supported that too. That is the process that we have. If we had put on the agenda today, we are giving away $1.2 million of next year's budget early, come on down and advocate for whatever it is that you think is the most pressing need. We would have heard from the firefighters whose the ongoing cost of those 13 positions is $1.4 million. We would have heard from the police. Coincidentally, the cost of the background investigators that we approved one-time funding in the full bump is $1.2 million. We would have heard from the youth pass students. That's $960,000 that was one-time funded and which is not funded in next year's budget. We would certainly have heard from the parks advocates, and for the union advocates, we've already committed to $2 million to pay our workers fairly and give them union jobs and benefits. That's one-time money. There's no guarantee that those are going to be ongoing. And the Parks Bureau is looking at a $3 million cut with the 5% budget cuts. We've heard from police that they can't do 5%. We've heard from firefighters they can't do 5%. Those are more than half of the general fund budget. I don't know where the council thinks this money is going to come from. I'm really worried. We have $11 million in one-time funds coming up. This council wisely dedicated half of that to infrastructure maintenance to catch up on transportation, parks, and emergency management infrastructure. That leaves us $5.5 million in one-time money. That means I don't know how we're going to find the money to fund this, and I'm sad and resentful that I'm put in the position of the first time that I've been on this council of voting against a funding mechanism for housing, because it's a shell game. We already allocated this money in this year's budget as one time because we weren't sure how much tax we were going to get from Airbnb. We have already allocated $5 million in ongoing funding. It's all money. This is a budget shell game, and it decreases our community's understanding of the budget. Yesterday, the Mercury had a story that said, oh, everything's great. The budget is balanced, and we've got $11 million to spend. This is going to be a great budget meeting. So then that was the evening after the Office of Neighborhood Involvement first budget advisory committee, and yesterday evening I was at the Parks meeting. We're talking about potentially closing community centers. We're talking about significant numbers of city workers losing their jobs, their current jobs that pay a living wage and allow them to have decent housing. This is irresponsible, and I'm very sorry that we're doing it in this manner where a lot of people don't realize that we actually are giving away, we're starting the budget process early, and that the cuts that have been requested are not imaginary cuts. This vote means that some of those cuts will happen, and because of all of the other things that are one-time funded, that are required by the Department of Justice and by the settlement agreement, the arbitrators agreement, we're going to be required by law to put a lot more money into other things, and that's going to mean that a lot of city services that people care about and that people are employed in are going to be going away. No.
Well, let me begin by thanking you, Dan, for bringing this forward. I thought it was a good idea last year. I think it's a better idea today. And Mayor Hales, thank you for your support. And I appreciate the principled concerns that Commissioner Novick has raised in the questions that he asked. We are legislators, which means we have to make choices. What one colleague might call a shell game, another colleague might call making tough choices with limited resources. And that's our job. Last year, this council said we were going to make a substantial commitment to transportation funding. I don't remember people raising all these concerns about doing so because as a council, we agreed there was a transportation funding crisis. This year, we have said there's a housing crisis, and we're going to focus our attention on meeting the needs of people who are literally dying on our streets. So we make choices. We are also guided by our values, each of us, in good faith. We can disagree, but we can disagree honorably. Our values say that this is a pressing need. The The reason that I think this particular mechanism makes sense is that we are taking revenues from an activity which is making the current problem worse. In other words, we are mitigating the negative impacts of something this council legalized. Now, if you want to go back in time and agree with my position that we should not have authorized short-term rentals, I'm fine with that. Steve, let's find a third vote. But as long as we authorize an activity which we all understood was going to make a bad situation worse, I think the decent thing to do is to take the revenue and address the mitigation. To me, this is no different than taking lottery money and using it to address problem gamblers. We are using a revenue source to mitigate the negative impact of an activity of which I remain very dubious. Second, Commissioner Saltzman has laid out a vision for using a housing investment fund as a flexible tool to address this housing crisis. My political mentor, Barney Frank, set up a federal housing trust fund. His greatest regret when he left Congress was he couldn't fund it. A housing investment fund without funds is a rather empty exercise. And these funds are flexible, and that means, unlike our federal funds, which are heavily encumbered, unlike our urban renewal funds, which are heavily restricted, these funds can be used for all kinds of good purposes, including gap financing and land banking and all kinds of things which are going to get us to where we want to go. And I will support every reasonable proposal Dan puts forward to build up that HIF. And the fact, finally, that Director Krieger, who has, I have to just say, in his 6 months on the job, 5 months? 4, felt like 6. In his 4 months on the job, has left quite a mark and an impression on our community and on this council. For Director Krieger to say that he can take this income stream and bolster it by bonding it so that we can actually address the needs of low-income families today and not tomorrow, I applaud that. So for me, this is a day to celebrate. I wish we had done this a year ago, because technically had we done so, then it would have been reflected in our forecast. But I think it is principled. I think it is a sound policy. And I applaud you, Dan, for sticking to it. And today we have the votes to pass it, and I proudly vote aye.
Commissioner, I have to say that none of us is actually making a tough choice today, and I include myself in this because I voted yes, because none of us is saying what we would cut in the ongoing budget in order to fund this.
Saltzman?
Well, I appreciate the discussion, and I know this is a vexing decision to make, but I think, as I said in my opening remarks, when we consider that we have a deficit of 24,000, a lack of 24,000 households, or 24,000 residents who lack access to affordable housing, and you add another 10,000 in our comp plan projections, we've got to start somewhere with a steady state stream of revenue that can be used for capital investment in affordable housing. And that's exactly what this is going for. And with the tantalizing ability to use revenue bonds to turn this $1.2 million into $12 to $30 million, and is just an opportunity that I think we can't pass up. All of us have said we are in an affordable housing crisis. That's the number one issue you hear from legislators, from business leaders, from your persons on the street, certainly those who are finding themselves under very tenuous conditions in their rental housing, evictions, rent increases. We've got to increase the supply, and we've got to start somewhere, and this is a good start. And believe me, one of the first entities we will call when we have these revenue bonds is Airbnb. We hope they'll purchase some of these bonds. We think it's a good role model for them, a good behavior for them to demonstrate. So I'm very pleased. I appreciate the support of my colleagues and respect certainly the opposition, principled opposition of my other colleagues. Aye.
Hales?
Although the next budget process will not be easy, and I don't want anyone to get the impression that I think it's going to be a cakewalk. We are not without resources. This is a city that's financially strong, and the very prudent and conservative approach that our managers like Andrew Scott take are one of the many reasons why that's the case, very important reason. I do believe that we have in this emergency more to draw on than we have done so far. We are again seeing great prosperity in at least parts of our local economy. The revenues will come from that, and we will have options even if we dare to speak its name to increase public revenues by tax increases and new taxes. Those are not things that we do casually here, but in this economy and with this crisis, they're worth considering. And we should do that as a community. So I do not think that we're up against it here. We have tough choices to make. We will see where we stand when we do the budget in the spring. I think we will stand in at least this good a place and hopefully better. But extraordinary times require extraordinary measures. And this is an extraordinary situation with housing. I had the opportunity to meet with my colleagues last week who are mayors of other West Coast cities and had sort of a teasing conversation with Mayor Ed Lee from San Francisco that Portland's trying really hard not to be San Francisco. And actually, San Francisco wished it had had the chance to not be San Francisco either, because the housing crisis there is so much greater than ours. So we really need to act with every tool at our disposal, with some level of risk, and with the credible claim to the people that are up against it in housing that we are doing everything we can with every tool that we have. And I think this is consistent with that. We will spend less on shelters someday if we spend more on housing now. We need to spend more on shelters at the moment, and that's a cost of doing business in this housing crisis. But if we do this right and well, we will not be San Francisco, we'll still be Portland, and it will be because we have been so aggressive at just the right time on this critical issue. Thank you all. Aye.
Mayor, in light of the relationship you're trying to develop with West Coast mayors, could we pick on an East Coast city? And
Okay, pick one. New York.
You don't want to be Boston.
New York, okay, yeah. Actually, everybody wants to be. All right, so let's move on, please, to 1322.
Accept bid of Iron Horse Excavation LLC, doing business as Oxbow Construction for the Skidmore Pump Station upgrade for $1,094,000.
Ms. Moody, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Christine Moody, Procurement Services. You have before you a procurement report recommending a contract award to Iron Horse Excavation. The engineer's estimate on this project was $731,000. On October 8th, 2015, 4 bids were received, and Iron Horse Excavation is the low bidder at $1,094,000. The Bureau of Environmental Services has reviewed the bid items and accepts the proposed pricing at 50% over the engineer's estimate. In their bid analysis, BES identified cost inflation and improved market conditions as contributing factors for the price of the bid. The second and third low bidders were within 5% of Iron Horse's bid. The city identified 5 divisions of work for potential minority, women, and emerging small business subcontracting opportunities. MWESB subcontracting participation on this project is at 27%, with overall MWESB at 72%, as Iron Horse Excavation is a certified women-owned business. I will turn this back over to council if you have any questions regarding the bidding process, and representative from BES is here.
This may be a new high water mark, and then we're actually 50% over the engineer's estimate. The times are showing up in our bids here.
That's a question I had for BES. We were told in the prior presentation, we were told this was a fairly specialized piece of work that had some complications. What accounts for the 50% premium from what was originally a high confidence estimate?
Again, I'm Dan Hebert. I'm a senior engineer with the BES and the overall project manager for this project. There are a number of complicating factors in this site. One, it's a very small site and restricted by easements that we've negotiated with the Sisters of Perpetual Sorrow and having to work around all of their holidays. We didn't really account for that very well in the engineer's estimate. And we unfortunately relied upon an estimate that was nearly a year old going to bid, and the market conditions changed rapidly during that 1 year. So other than that, it's, again, it was an outdated estimate. We didn't have the engineer record revisited immediately before the bid, and the fact that we're converting an old suction lift station by rebuilding it as a submersible pump station complicated our efforts on this site.
Is there anything that you've learned, sir, in terms of the bidding, our estimating process that we might do differently next time?
Yes, we're going to pay much closer attention on all of our projects now to revisiting estimates at the 100% level and immediately before we submit projects to procurement services to bid.
Mayor and colleagues, I got briefed this morning from Mike Jordan. We set a record this year on Halloween in terms of flow because of the volume of rain. That record was recently broken, Commissioner Novick, last Monday. And we saw a 6-fold increase in volume. Now, our system is built to a certain capacity. Big Pipe was designed to cover 94% of expected needs. The pump stations play a very vital role. But we had a 6 to 7 time flow increase. And so in 1 year, we set a record and exceeded that record. And the reason I mention this is that while BES maintains the system, PBOT does most of the visible hard work in the community. Steve, I want to congratulate your PBOT team for the way they managed the storm last week.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm very proud of the work all the bureaus did together. And one thing I heard consistently was the bureaus coordinated wonderfully in really trying times.
By the way, Mayor, some people have asked, well, if we knew that a 6 to 7-fold volume increase might strain capacity, why didn't we build the big pipe to a different specification? It turns out that if we had gone from a 94% rate of success to 100%, anticipating every contingency, we might have tripled the cost. So that's going to become a relevant consideration when we talk about Superfund. What's the marginal utility of that extra 100 million or 200 million? And since that's money that is diverted from other good causes, it's something we need to grapple with.
Let's hope that if climate change means more boisterous storms, that we can figure out some other solutions other than building a second big pipe. Thank you. Other questions for the team? Thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak on this item? Motion to adopt the report.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Novick?
Thank you very much. Aye.
Great minority and women participation. Thank you. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye. Thank you both. Thank you. 1323.
Pay settlement claim of Pavel Krivolenkov and estate of Ksenia Alexandrova in the sum of $325,000 involving the Portland Bureau of Transportation.
You want to introduce this, or you just want to take it straight to the city attorney here?
Let's go straight to the city attorney.
Good morning, Mr.
Good
Mayor,
morning.
Commissioners. My name is Rob Yamachika, Deputy City Attorney. The ordinance before you is to authorize settlement of the Krivolenkov and estate of Alexandrova lawsuit. The lawsuit stems from a automobile accident at Southeast 108th and Washington that took place November 20th, 2012, where a driver, Miss Dennis, ended up hitting elderly couple. Mr. Krivolenkov was 78 at the time of the accident, and his wife was 71. Unfortunately, Miss Alexandrova passed away 5 hours after the accident. The medical damages in the case for Mr. Krivolenkov were $129,000, and for Miss Alexandrova, $117,000. The intersection's controlled by well, there's 4 pedestrian crossing signs, a ladder crosswalk, 2 stop bars, and a sign that says "Stop here for pedestrians." In the middle of 2 of these signs, there's a supplemental warning beacon, which is activated by a motion sensor. Officers investigating the incident after the accident determined that one motion sensor on the south side of the street, it didn't pick up motion quite as easily as it should have, which would have triggered this warning light. There was going to be testimony that the warning light was not active. The driver admitted liability and was negligent for failing to keep a proper lookout, failing to observe the signs and heed those signs, and failing to yield for the pedestrians. Based on the medical damages in the case, the sympathetic plaintiffs, and the fact that the motion sensor wasn't working quite properly. It's my professional opinion, after consulting with risk management and the director of PBOT, that a $325,000 settlement was appropriate for this case. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
I
Questions?
should add that did have questions about the potential presidential impact of this settlement, and I'm convinced that these are really unusual circumstances.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone want to speak on this item? It's an
Is-
emergency ordinance, then we'll take a roll call vote.
Is the gentleman joining us the survivor?
No, this is John Bueller from Risk Management and my colleague David Landrum. I should mention that the intersection has since been upgraded. There's now a pedestrian hybrid beacon. After an analysis after the accident, it only warranted a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, but because there's an overhead mast there, we were able to put in a more protective device, so this intersection is safer than it was before.
Good. Thank you. Appreciate that too. Okay, roll call, please.
Novick,
Thank you very much. Aye.
Fritz,
I'm very sad for the family's loss, and I appreciate the work on it. Aye.
Fish,
Yes, I join with Commissioner Fritz. Our hearts go out to the family. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Thank you. 1324.
Assess benefited properties for street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements in the Northeast 52nd Avenue and Alberta Street Local Improvement District.
Before we get started on this, just one time management point. I'm planning to take the pulled items at 2 o'clock, not during what remains of the morning session, unless there's anybody that particularly wants to talk about the pulled items.
If we were going to get to the parks item this morning, I'd like to have the pulled parks item at the same time as the other
Okay.
parks items.
All right, we can certainly do that. Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hales. Carla, if we could switch to the presentation. I'm Andrew Abbey, Local Improvement District Administrator. It is my pleasure to be joined today by Travis Rubel from Portland Parks and Recreation. I know it is the afternoon, so we will be respectful of council's time. Just wanted to share a little bit of what I thought council would find to be good news this early afternoon. So,
Still seeing the OH.
Yeah, Carla, you're
SU.
going to switch?
So,
for us.
just to go over this, we did not receive any remonstrances against final assessment, or excuse me, objections against final assessment of the LID. We just kind of wanted to show you a couple of slides here. Thank you very much, Carla. So this is a map of where the project area is. It's in the Cully neighborhood, which until recently has been significantly underserved by parks, and unfortunately today continues to be significantly underserved by transportation infrastructure. This is the second LID that we've completed in Cully in the last 2 years. The genesis for this project is I had worked with Parks on a new street project in the Palhurst-Gilbert neighborhood, where the park had been built several years in advance of the street improvements, and we had a pretty chaotic situation due to the lack of proper infrastructure. So when that LID got completed, we had spent over $100,000 tearing out recently completed park improvements. So Parks and PBOT put their head together, and we thought there was a more efficient way to do that. And so at the outset of this project, Parks and PBOT collaborated extensively on it. As we kicked off the design, our traffic engineers advised us to widen the pavement on Alberta for traffic safety reasons. So even though we increased the reconstructed pavement area by 9%, we still came in 10% below budget. And I think that's largely because we already had a contractor mobilized, and there were a lot of efficiencies in doing that. Most importantly, we avoided tearing out the newly constructed infrastructure by Parks, and we now have safer pedestrian access to the park and near Rigler Elementary School. And I also wanted to tip my hat to the Bureau of Environmental Services. BES was very helpful in working with PBOT to be proactive and plan. So if you look at Alberta Street, the north side of the right-of-way is about 2 feet lower than the south side of the right-of-way. And what BES did is they worked with PBOT to plan the stormwater system to allow future street improvements on the north side of the street to improve those property owners' drainage should they choose to do so in the future. And what we built here was an oversized sump sed system that has the capability of allowing those property owners to construct the street on the north side and tap into that sump sed system without tearing up the entire street. And that is the extent of my presentation, and I'll turn it over to my better half, Travis Rubel.
Mayor Hillis, Commission, thank you for having us here today. My name is Travis Rubel. I'm a capital project manager and landscape architect for the Parks Bureau. I'm happy to be here to talk about the wonderful work completed on this project, as I believe it exemplifies strong communication and coordination between Parks, PBOT, and BES. The formation of this LID was directly in line with the desires from the community to build more sidewalks within the Cully neighborhood. These frontage improvements provide better pedestrian access to Rigler Elementary to the south and to the park. They also provide for increased pedestrian safety for unloading vehicles and park users. By working with our colleagues at PBOT, we were able to efficiently coordinate the design of the park with the design of the right-of-way improvements to create a seamless transition and overall development that has met with praise within the Cully community. This project should serve as a model for future development of this type, as it capitalizes on the internal expertise each bureau brings to the table, while allowing at the same time the adjacent community to optionally participate in right-of-way improvements the LID affords. Both Parks, PBOT, and BS should be proud of the coordination had on this project, while at the same time achieving each bureau's goals. We have delivered an award-winning project that serves over 1,300 local residents, previous not having park facility services. Indeed, we are raising the bar for future park development work. We at Parks are happy to report this development not only came in on schedule and under budget, but we've put forth a quality project for all to enjoy. As a result of the success of this project, we will continue to look for other opportunities to participate with our colleagues at PBOT, BES in the future, which we hope you will continue to support. Finally, I'd like to thank Andrew Abbey for his diligent work in making this overall process so successful. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak about this important work being completed for our community.
Thank you both. Questions for Andrew or Travis? Thank you both. Thanks very much. Anyone else want to speak on this item? See
Crystal
some
signed
Cully,
up, but I think she left.
Cully residents here. Mr. Gunderson, come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Gunderson. I live in the Cully neighborhood. Been on the board, and Parks has been my passion for 51 years. And this is one of my greatest delights in seeing this park finished. Not only to me, but to the whole community. If you go by there, it is packed. Every day, you can't find a parking spot around the park. It's unbelievable. And it's one of the best designed small parks that I've seen in my professional career. So I want to thank the Parks Bureau for doing a fantastic job, and for City Council for making it possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Laura Young, and I'm the transportation chair for the Cully Association of Neighbors. So Rich and I work in tandem on a lot of projects. He's been the, did you say the Parks chair for 10 years? I think it's been roughly. And I've been the transportation chair for 6 years for Cully. So I just wanted to add a couple of comments about the LIDs that we have had in the Cully neighborhood. Specifically, I'd like to express support and appreciation for the ongoing efforts of PBOT's LID office to partner with Parks and BES and other bureaus and agencies to find creative ways to fund and implement critically needed transportation infrastructure projects in Cully. And also acknowledge there's potential for similar successes in other underserved areas of East and West Portland, with whom Cully shares a common history of annexation and similar community needs. These projects have provided desperately needed infrastructure improvements without creating financial burdens that could negatively impact low-income homeowners in our neighborhood and others. And I believe this is the spirit of cooperation between the bureaus, community leaders, and advocates like ourselves demonstrates the LID system can work and does benefit lower-income communities when applied with creative utilization of resources and robust community involvement. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Questions? Thank you both very much. So this item is not an emergency ordinance. It'll pass to second reading, but thanks everyone for a great project, great partnership. Thank you. All right, let's move on to 1325.
Authorize a competitive solicitation for the purchase of security services for Smart Park garages and the Portland streetcar facility at an estimated amount of $4 million.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Michael Jacobs. I'm the Smart Park Manager for the Bureau of Transportation. Again, the ordinance before you this morning is to authorize a competitive solicitation for the purchase of security services for Smart Park garages and the Portland streetcar facility at an estimated amount of about $4 million for a total of 5 years to be paid for through garage and streetcar receipts. Security is critically important as the safety of shoppers, visitors, and business customers is important in carrying out the Smart Park mission. As in other cities around the nation, downtown parking garages are heavily used by legitimate customers, but also can occasionally attract those who conduct themselves unlawfully or misuse the garages, which can discourage parking in the garages and can also have a negative impact on economic growth. With that, I respectfully request Council's authorization for procurement services to issue a competitive solicitation for security services at the Smart Park garages and the streetcar facility. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions?
What's the current system that's established for dealing with any complaints that we receive about the conduct of any of these security personnel?
About the security personnel?
Right.
They will be reported to the security company, and they have their own internal procedures.
So how do we review? So do we monitor complaints, that if any?
I don't monitor the complaints that come in against security guards, but I can tell you that I haven't received any complaints that I can think of in the last 3 or 4 years.
So if a citizen felt like they were poorly treated, you would have heard
By a
about
security
it?
guard? Typically, I would hear about it, and the security company would let me know if they got a complaint.
Well, I bring a certain experience working in a commission-style form of government where communication is not our strong suit. So unless you have a formal mechanism for receiving complaints, it may or may not come to your attention, and you don't know what you don't know. So what is the formal mechanism for advising the city of complaints regarding the security services?
They are required to give us monthly activity reports, and we meet with them twice a month in management meetings, and in those meetings, they would bring up any of those concerns.
But we meet with the companies, right?
Yes.
Commissioner Fish is basically asking, is there a way for a citizen to figure out who within the city to complain?
It is, it is posted on our website, and we can certainly look at improving ways where the public can know who to contact if they have concerns.
And I'm not suggesting there is some wholesale problem. This is something Commissioner Novick and I have been talking about in a different context. I'm just interested in making sure that, particularly where we contract out services, that we have the fact that we contract out services is of no concern to the average person in the public. They're gonna come to one of these lots. They're gonna either get good service or bad service, and if they get bad service, they're gonna want to know who they complain to, and they're gonna want to know that it's taken seriously. So I'm asking innocently, what is that mechanism? And because we're talking about security services, people are operating in an area that sometimes results in interactions with the public, which could become charged, and where we're hoping people show good judgment. And so I just want to make sure we have a system whereby we're getting good real-time information and able to monitor the performance under this contract.
Hey, you raised an interesting question. Not just in this form of government, but certainly in this one, if people can't figure out who to complain to, they often complain to the mayor's office about TriMet or the schools or anything else.
Yeah.
And so, not being a little flippant, but I don't recall us getting any complaints about security at the parking garages either. So if they were unable to find them the right place in our structure, they would end up in my office, and I don't remember hearing anything lately. But it's a good one to watch.
And actually, Commissioner, I think that's a reasonable point, and I'd like to explore the possibility of using signage at the garages or something so that people are aware that there is a city office they can call.
Okay. Other questions or concerns?
To reconfirm, the contract requires the employees to be at least $15 an hour.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else want to speak on this item? If not, it passes the second reading, 1326. Speaking of
Just
parking.
a Point of order, since I know we have staff waiting for agenda, are we going to break at 12:30?
It was my hope that we could get the parks items done and then break at 12:30. Any reason to do otherwise? folks?
Mayor, could we, since it's a second reading on 1330, can we?
Yeah.
And I have the director here, can we do that as well?
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll get through the parks items, deal with the second reading, and save the rest. How's that sound? We have 3 second reading items. We ought to be able to dispose of those quickly. Okay? All right, another parking item, please. 1326.
1326, extend contract with Central Parking System of Washington, Inc. through March 31, 2017, with an administrative option to extend 1 additional year through March 31, 2018, to manage and maintain 6 smart parking garages.
Commissioner Novick.
Mr. Jacobs again.
Thank you. Good morning again, Mayor and Commissioners. Again, my name is Michael Jacobs. I'm the Smart Park Manager for the Bureau of Transportation.
Would
The Smart
you
Park
ever come in, please?
The Smart Park program consists of 6 parking facilities with almost 3,800 parking spaces. The Smart Park mission is to support the economic viability of the central city by providing an affordable system of parking garages primarily designed to meet the short-term needs of shoppers, visitors, and business clients, and by investing in other central city transportation improvements. Specifically, Central Parking provides services including garage operations, janitorial services, equipment maintenance services. They operate the merchant validation program, and they have recently taken on the PCI compliance responsibilities. The contract is funded by receipts from the garages. It is a separate fund. It is not part of the general fund. For the current fiscal year, the net operational revenues were budgeted at $12.1 million. The operational expenses were budgeted at $2.66 million. The contract provided for a current monthly management fee of approximately $810 per garage per month, along with an incentive fee, which was anticipated to be approximately $65,000 for the current fiscal year for all of the garages. I am happy to say that our current revenues are about 10% higher than they were when the contract started. And from a recent survey conducted, we have found a 97% satisfaction rate for customer service in the garages and a 92% satisfaction rate with the automated payment system. In addition, we have found an 89% overall satisfaction rate with the Smart Park Validation Program, which was from a survey conducted with the downtown merchants. With that, I respectfully request a 1-year extension for this contract with the director's administrative option for 1 additional year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is the operator still required to provide somebody on site at each garage?
Yes, when we originally,
A real person, live person?
yes,
Okay,
yes,
that's still a requirement.
yes.
Okay.
Commissioner, I've had to take advantage of that a couple of times
So
the
have
last
I.
year.
So have I. That's why I was asking.
All right, other questions? Thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak on this item? Then it passes the second reading. Second reading, please, on item 1327.
Update private property impound towing code to add contact requirement consistent with state law.
Roll call, please.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hale.
Aye. And let's take 1328 and 29 together.
1328, authorize a contract with ESA Vigil Agreements, Inc. for design and construction administration services for the replacement of Forest Park pedestrian bridges in Maclay Park and on the Maple Trail for a total not to exceed amount of $235,000. And 1329, authorize a contract with Greenworks PC for design and construction administration services for the Washington Park Rose Garden accessibility improvements for a total not to exceed amount of $170,000.
Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. These are both projects that are possible because of the generosity of Portland voters in passing the 2014 Parks Replacement Bond, and they fulfill the promise to voters to prioritize continued access to natural areas and also continued accessibility. With that, I'll turn it over to Mary Ann Casson, our bond projects manager.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hales, members of the council. My name again is Mary Ann Casson. I'm the replacement bond manager. And once again, I'm here with some fabulous bond projects. Apologies that you've seen these first 2 slides. I promise I'll change them up for the next time. We've created this amazing system of parks over the last several hundred years, and that we've done it through a series of bonds and levies. In 2014, just over a year ago, we got a resounding yes vote to spend $68 million for urgent repair and replacement projects. If you remember, there are 7 focus areas within the bond program. I'm here to talk about 2 different projects. The first one is in the Trails and Bridges theme area, and this one talks about preserving access to natural areas and open spaces by repairing bridges and trails. The first project is to do 3 different projects within Forest Park. They're in 2 different locations. They're small bridges, but they're complex projects because of the places they're located. They're difficult to get to. They have a significant permit restrictions, as they should. They're in very sensitive environments with salmon-bearing streams. So though they're small projects, the substantial completion won't be until November 2017. And often what you see on these kind of projects is the ugly stuff is underneath, and what you're trying to avoid is the photo on the left there. The first 2 locations are within Maclay Park, really closely located to the main park entrance. This is a very, very popular trail. And though there are dozens more projects that we could attack, we've done an analysis and determined that these make the most sense to hit right off the bat. They're on such a main trail. The second one is to replace a bridge that's been missing for several years. Actually, it's deep within Forest Park on one of the most popular trails called the Maple Trail. We've had to close this section of trail since 2012. There just wasn't the resources to accomplish it. And again, this is a difficult to get to location, but very worth doing. We had a competitive project to select our consultants here. The second theme area is accessibility in our approach, and this is twofold. The main way we're doing it is on every single project we're looking at accessibility and doing what we can within the project. But we decided in addition to that, we would add one signature ADA project that was selected exclusively because it was an ADA project. And the one we chose was the Washington Park Rose Garden. The public was involved in choosing that one particular project. The idea there is to address the main esplanade, the parking, and the significant ramp that gets down to this main esplanade. At the moment, it's a 13% ramp. Doing this project, we will need to be sensitive to the exquisite detailing that you have within the park, including all the stonework, et cetera. And we're working very closely with the stakeholders to make sure we're aware of and, to the degree possible, can get it either completed or at least phased in by the time of their centennial in 2017. Our MWESB utilization, again, is good on these projects. We did extensive outreach efforts to get these numbers up as best we could. And once again, I'll warn you that you're going to see a lot of me in the next few months, and these are the things coming at least in the next couple of months. I can answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. Questions?
Ms. Casson, you realize that every other city employee is jealous of you because you're able to just bring good city news at all times.
I know that. I'm a very lucky person.
That's why we were able to recruit you back.
That's right.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak on any of these items, either of these items? They're both emergency ordinances, so let's take a vote, please.
1328, Novick.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thanks to the voters and to Mary Ann. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. And 1329.
Novick.
Aye.
Thanks to our whole Parks team. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Okay, let's take, you had one more item that was.
That's right, please. It's 1312.
pulled. You want to deal with that? 1312.
Authorize a purchase order to Valley Athletics for purchase of infield mix delivered to Walker Stadium at Lentz Park for $39,158.
Commissioner Fritz, did you pull this? Or
I
did
pulled
somebody
it.
else?
We need to amend it. There's some code citations that are incorrect, and the amendment fixes that error. And we did send it out on the Tuesday memo. So I moved the substitute.
Substitute's been moved.
Second.
For further discussion, roll call on adoption of the substitute.
Novick.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Anyone want to speak on this item? Then a roll call vote on the amended emergency ordinance.
Novick.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thanks very much to Kiaselli, who is here, and to the council for your indulgence. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Okay, we have a couple more second readings. Let's get those done. 1317, please. Oh, sorry, wrong number, 1331, I think.
1306 and 1307 were pulled.
Right, no, I'm just talking about the emergency items that are still on the regular calendar. We'll take those others up this afternoon, and,
We were going to do 1330, Mayor?
yeah, 1330 and 31 and 32 and 33 are all second readings.
1330, authorize a contract with the lowest responsive bidder for construction of the Columbia Boulevard wastewater treatment plant, stormwater pump station 2 West, project number E10726, for an estimated amount of $880,700.
Roll call, please.
Novick?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Mayor, given the time, I will not give a 30-minute speech in support of this, but
Good.
I do, and by the way, we seem to have a video, do we have a video issue? On the screen, anyway, I want to acknowledge, Mayor and colleagues, that, as you know, we have new leadership at the Water Bureau, a new director, Mike Sturr, and a new engineer, senior engineer, Teresa Elliott. And they have been extremely busy this year addressing the broader issue of resilience, which in plain English means how do we protect our system in the event of an earthquake, or what some people call the big one. Nothing is more important than ensuring that we can continue to provide a basic service during a crisis. And I want to commend Mike Sturr and Teresa Elliott and Dave Peters and Tim Collins and all the folks working in the front lines for the work they've done this year. In particular, bringing to a peaceful resolution a set of very controversial issues involving reservoirs, both at Washington Park and at Mount Tabor. And Commissioner Fritz, a special thank you to you for your invaluable partnership in bringing Mount Tabor to a soft landing. I think once upon a time, people doubted we could get to this point, but in working with the community, we've arrived, I think, at the right place, regardless of how one feels about the underlying federal mandate. The net effect of that is our water system will be safer as a result of the investments in Mount Tabor and Washington Park. And now today, we're taking up the question of a secure conduit underneath the Willamette River. And that is hugely important because we have hospitals and businesses in the downtown corridor. We have residential customers and business customers throughout Southwest and Northwest. And then we have very valued wholesale customers that together get us to system-wide about 1 million people that we serve. Again, I don't think anything's more important than making our system safe and secure and resilient. And I'm very proud of this step forward on Willamette River crossing. One other observation, this project is already in our 5-year CIP, which means it had been previously budgeted. So in and of itself, it will not have a new and significant rate impact. And recently, I've directed my colleagues that this year, as with prior years, the council expects them, if they are to propose a rate increase, that it come in below 5%, consistent with the commitment that you, Mayor Hales, that you and I have made to stabilizing rates and creating some predictability. So again, thank you, Mike Sturr, Teresa Elliott, Dave Peters, Tim Collins, and all the people who are working so hard on making our system more resilient. And thank you to my colleagues for the support they've given this new leadership team. Aye.
I believe that vote, Commissioner, was for 1332 and 33. We're doing 1330.
30.
Right. Okay. Saltzman?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye, yep, I didn't realize until you started that we were off on the calendar, but we'll put that in the record.
Carla, we don't have a,
13, so we still need to vote on 1331 and 1332 and 1333, right? Okay, let's take those roll call votes, please.
1331, authorize the Bureau of Environmental Services to acquire certain permanent property rights necessary for construction of the Woodlawn King Alley Sewer Rehabilitation Project through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Roll call, please.
Novick?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
aye?
Saltzman?
Aye.
Hale?
Aye. 1332.
Approve findings to authorize an exemption to the competitive bidding requirements, authorize a competitive solicitation for use of the design-build alternative contracting method and authorize payment for construction related to the Willamette River Crossing project for an estimated amount of $40 million.
Roll call, please.
Novick?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
I love watching the English question time on TV, and when the Prime Minister says, I refer my colleagues to my earlier comments. And on this, I would refer my colleagues to my earlier comments. Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Hales?
Rare day when both Carla and Commissioner Fish makes a mistake. Aye. 1333.
Authorize a formal qualification-based selection request for proposal, process, and contract for owner's representative services related to the Willamette River Crossing project for an estimated amount of $4 million.
Roll call.
Novick?
Again, that's one of my favorite projects. Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Hales?
Here, Seattle still has a used tunnel machine for sale. Aye.
Don't say that, Mayor. Please don't say that.
I'm teasing. Okay, now, Dan, are you still content to stay 1334 to the afternoon, or would you rather deal with it now?
I can do it in 1 minute.
Oh, well, let's
So,
do
yeah.
then, please. Let's take on 1334.
Revise the resolution approving and terminating limited tax exemptions for properties under the homebuyer opportunity and multiple unit limited tax exemption programs to correct Exhibit A.
Commissioner Salzman.
Well, I love it. I think we've all experienced this where we give a talk or go to a meeting and somebody raises an issue and by golly, you're actually able to do something about it. This was an issue that was raised. Although this isn't the specific property, it has to deal with people who are owning homes under our home ownership limited tax exemption program. If a bank forecloses on that home, they previously, or before we made this rule change, had to vacate the house, even if the bank were to sell the property within 180 days. So we're making a rule change. This allows one homeowner to stay in her home pending this foreclosure proceeding and to maintain her home ownership limited tax exemption. And we do have a couple others that will be coming their way as a result of somebody flagging this issue to us.
That's great. That's
So
great.
urge adoption.
Thank you. And I don't believe there's anyone here to testify, so let's take a vote on the resolution, please.
Novick?
Aye.
Fritz?
That's really terrific, Commissioner Solomon. Thank you for telling us the backstory to that. It is great when somebody brings something to our attention and we're like, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, really.
Aye.
Fish?
I'd like to see more of that can-do spirit in my meetings with my colleagues on a monthly basis. Aye.
Saltzman?
Thanks to Dory Van Bockel for taking care of this issue. Aye.
Hales?
Aye. Okay, now we will recess till 2 p.m. and take up the items from this morning and our afternoon calendar.